Chapter 1033. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. There was only a month left before the ancient sword tomb closed. During this month, a small number of prodigies managed to comprehend the sword technique. Most of the prodigies failed. However, regardless of whether they succeeded or failed, there was a place they had to go. That was where the heavenly Tao stone tablet was located. Although not everyone could use the heavenly Tao stone tablet to create their own sword technique. However, it also had the effect of assisting in the cultivation of sword techniques. Comprehending some profound sword techniques by the side of the heavenly Tao stone tablet would yield great results. Therefore, regardless of whether they succeeded in comprehending the sword technique, all the prodigies rushed to the center of the ancient sword tomb, where the heavenly Tao stone tablet was located. There were only 3 people left who had not rushed to the heavenly Tao stone tablet. Yi Guqin, Jian Jingheng, and Hua Wuxiu. Will the 3 of them miss the chance to comprehend the heavenly Tao stone tablet? Yes, although comprehending the sword technique is important, the heavenly Tao stone tablet is more important. Yes, the 3 of them all have the potential to create their own sword techniques. It's a pity that they missed the heavenly Tao stone tablet. Outside the ancient sword tomb, the crowd was discussing. A month had passed, but the 3 of them did not make any moves. However, a few days later, there was a strange movement on Hua Wuxiu's side. He suddenly opened his eyes, and a black and white sword qi rushed into the sky as if it was going to shake the clouds. I succeeded. Hua Wuxiu stood up. His handsome face was expressionless, but there was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He had successfully comprehended the mid-tier emperor-level sword technique. He actually succeeded in comprehending the mid-tier emperor-level sword technique. Seeing this scene, countless exclamations rang out. Ha, no wonder he has no cultivation. Hua Mo laughed and was in a good mood. On the other hand, Bei Xian Elder was a little uncomfortable. Not long after, there was also a movement on Jian Jingheng's side. He opened his eyes, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. He stretched out his hand and displayed his sword. Sword qi spread out like silk, as if it was going to seal the entire sky. Jian Jingheng had also comprehended the mid-tier emperor-level sword technique, and it was flawless. As expected of the sword sovereign's disciple, Jian Jingheng has also succeeded. He possesses the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent. It would be strange if he didn't succeed. He hasn't succeeded yet. Jian Jingheng turned to look at Yi Guqin, frowning slightly. Looks like Duge Wubai won't have a chance. I'd like to see if you can use the heavenly Tao stone tablet to create your own sword technique, Hua Wuxiu said indifferently. In any case, I won't be weaker than you. Jian Jingheng retorted. One of them was the disciple of the sword sovereign, while the other was the genius of the Hua family. Naturally, they were on opposing sides. After that, the 2 of them headed straight for the heavenly Tao stone tablet. In the entire ancient sword tomb, Yi Guqin was the only one who was still meditating. Sigh. Bei Xian Elder sighed deeply. His face was full of worry. Heh. Old ghost Bei Xian, you look very vexed. Hua Mo couldn't help but mock. He could finally see Yi Guqin being defeated. The results aren't out yet. Don't laugh too early. Bei Xian Elder said harshly. Even if this kid manages to comprehend the sword technique of the proud god continent, he will still use up all his time and miss the opportunity to enter the heavenly Tao stone tablet. Hua Mo pointed out. Bei Xian Elder couldn't refute that. Looks like Duge Wubai picked up a sesame seed and threw away a watermelon. He might not even be able to pick up a sesame seed. After all, how can the sword technique left behind by the Alliance Master be so easy to comprehend? Everyone was discussing fervently. However, none of the noise outside could disturb Yi Guqin. Since he had chosen the most difficult sword technique, he naturally had to comprehend it. At the same time, the other geniuses had all gathered around the heavenly Tao stone tablet. The heavenly Tao stone tablet was about 100 feet tall. It looked as gentle as jade, like a huge pebble. Its surface was covered with many natural Tao patterns, as if it was describing the principles of heaven and earth. At this moment, the surface of the heavenly Tao stone tablet was covered with a layer of hazy brilliance. Every genius who got close to the heavenly Tao stone tablet was illuminated by a ray of brilliance. The heavenly Tao stone tablet makes one's mind clear and enlightened. Many of the difficulties in practicing the sword technique suddenly become clear. It's indeed the heavenly Tao stone tablet. After receiving the benefits, all the geniuses were pleasantly surprised. The people of Sacred Cliff College also received many benefits. In particular, the geniuses who were more talented received more brilliance. Kong Kong and Mu Xingzu were shrouded in brilliance and looked extremely sacred. The two of them had a unique Kong Kong physique, while Mu Xingzu received the inheritance of Ying Ning's immortal soul pearl. Both of them were regarded as geniuses above the 7th grade. In addition, Hua Wuxiu, who had just arrived, also received a lot of brilliance. Of course, the most shocking thing was Jian Jinghong. The sword mark between his eyebrows suddenly emitted a strange fluctuation. A majestic and vast sword intent spread out, as if it was the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao stone tablet released even more brilliance, which enhanced Jian Jinghong's body, causing his entire body to shine brilliantly. As expected of the sword sovereign's disciple, Bei Xian Elder and the others exclaimed. Is that the power of the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent? Many geniuses beside the heavenly Tao stone tablet were shocked when they felt the fluctuation. The enhancement that Jian Jinghong received was enough to match a group of geniuses. Hua Wuxiu, let's compete again later. Jian Jinghong's lips curled into a smile. Humph. Hua Wuxiu snorted coldly and sat cross-legged on the ground. Both he and Jian Jinghong were ambitious existences. Not only did they want to use the heavenly Tao stone tablet to comprehend the previous swordsmanship, but they also wanted to use it to create their own sword moves. I've already comprehended that trump card. Next, I'll use the heavenly Tao stone tablet to perfect it. This will become my greatest killing weapon. Even Jian Jinghong might not be able to beat me, Hua Wuxiu murmured to himself. With the help of the heavenly Tao stone tablet and the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent, I can also create my own swordsmanship. Jian Jinghong's eyes were filled with determination. At this moment, everyone's eyes fell on the two of them. In this ancient sword tomb, Jian Jinghong and Hua Wuxiu were undoubtedly the two most likely to create their own swordsmanship. As for Yi Guqin, he seemed to have been forgotten. Although I have to admit that Dugu Wubai is talented, I'm afraid he'll really be defeated in the ancient sword tomb this time. Some of the spectators shook their heads and sighed. They all felt that it was a pity. Yi Guqin could continue to set records in the ancient sword tomb. That was equivalent to winning 3 consecutive championships in Mount Saint Crossing, the sword tomb, and the ancient sword tomb. This was a record that no Sky Pride in the Sword Dynasty had ever achieved. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Another half a month had passed. There was only half a month left before the ancient sword tomb closed. The Sky Prides around the heavenly Tao stone tablet had gained a lot. In particular, top Sky Prides such as Jian Jinghong and Hua Wuxiu had made great progress in this half a month. Only Yi Guqin was still comprehending his swordsmanship. The natural saint is done for this time. Just as everyone was sighing, the entire ancient sword tomb suddenly trembled. Huh! Everyone was shocked and turned to look at the source of the tremors. It was the 8 mountains. Yi Guqin, who had been sitting cross-legged in front of the 8 mountains for 1.5 months, finally opened his eyes. In an instant, the 8 mountains roared at the same time. Sword light lit up the sky and the sky shook. Chapter 1034. Rumble. The 8 mountains that recorded the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique shook at the same time, causing the entire ancient sword tomb to tremble. Even the Sky Prides who were sitting around the heavenly Tao steel were shocked. They looked in the direction of Yi Guqin with astonishment. That's where Dugu Wubai comprehended. Did he comprehend the Alliance leader's sword technique? That might be the case. He managed to comprehend an Upper Emperor sword technique in just 1.5 months. Such talent is worthy of the title of a natural saint. The sky prides exclaimed. Did he really comprehend it? Hua Wuxiu frowned slightly, but he soon felt relieved. No matter what, Yiguchen had already spent 1.5 months. How much could he gain from the heavenly Tao steel in the remaining half a month? No wonder Master told me that Dugu Wubai is no ordinary person. He even managed to comprehend the alliance leader's unique skill. It's a pity that he wasted so much time. Jian Jinghong shook his head. Etian Qing had once told him not to get on the bad side of Yiguchen. So what if he comprehended the sword technique? It's unwise to miss the heavenly Tao steel. Suki Miyazaki shook her head and sighed. Because of Mu Xingzu, she had always been biased against Yiguchen. Everyone inside and outside the ancient sword tomb was amazed. Yiguchen, on the other hand, was excited. On the 8 giant peaks, 8 different sword scars seemed to have turned into 8 runes and entered his mind. They were Qian, Kuan, Kan, Li, Sun, Zhen, Zhen, and Dui runes. The essence of the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique turned into 8 trigrams runes and was completely imprinted in Yiguchen's mind. Although he couldn't unleash the full power of the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique, as long as he remembered it, he would be able to cultivate it to perfection in the future. That's right, there's another great opportunity in the ancient sword tomb. It's the heavenly Tao steel. I can use the heavenly Tao steel's power to cultivate the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique, Yiguchen thought to himself. Comprehending the sword technique in the ancient sword tomb was only memorizing it. It did not mean that one would be able to cultivate it. It was impossible to cultivate an emperor's sword technique in just 1 or 2 months. However, with the help of the heavenly Tao stone tablet, Yiguchen was confident that he could perform a few basic sword moves of the Baji Samsara sword technique. Not only that, but he could also use it to comprehend the 4th move of the 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Ultimate Sword Domain, and so on. There was also the Sword Sex Ultimate Technique, the Reincarnation Sword Lotus. Previously, Yiguchen's cultivation base was at 108 leaves. He could use this opportunity to transform again. Time reincarnation steelies SSS with the ancient sword heavenly Tao steels, the steels heavenly Tao steel, heavens, soon after steels, reincarnation steels. The many prodigies around the heavenly Tao steel looked at him. As expected of senior brother Dugu. He can even comprehend the alliance leader's ultimate technique. That's right. Look, senior brother Dugu is a natural-born saint. Some of the prodigies from Sacred Cliff College had looks of admiration in their eyes. It was a high-grade emperor sword technique. Moreover, it was the ultimate technique of the proud divine continent. This was unprecedented. So what if you've comprehended the alliance leader's ultimate technique? The true opportunity lies in the heavenly Tao steel, Shangguan Jingshan said with a cold snort. As soon as Shangguan Jingshan finished speaking, the atmosphere fell silent. Indeed, Yiguchen only had half a month to comprehend the heavenly Tao steel. Even Hua Wuxiu and Jian Jinghong had a month to comprehend the heavenly Tao steel. The gap between them was huge. There's no need to worry, Yiguchen said indifferently. He approached the heavenly Tao steel. A waste of time is a waste of time. It's hard to make up for it, Yin Ju said sarcastically. These prodigies had lost to Yiguchen in the 5 Academies tournament. They couldn't wait to see Yiguchen suffer in the ancient sword tomb. Just as Yiguchen approached the heavenly Tao steel, the heavenly Tao steel trembled. The heavenly Tao stone tablet shook violently. Then, under the watchful eyes of all the geniuses, a turbulent brilliance poured out and sprinkled on Yiguchen. That vigorous and profound power was even stronger than Jian Jinghong's by a few notches. Inside the ancient sword tomb, all the prodigies were stunned. Outside the ancient sword tomb, the faces of Hua Mo, Yin Li, and the other family elders were also incomparably numb, as if weathered by the wind. No one had expected that Yiguchen could trigger such a reaction from the heavenly Tao steel. Even Jian Jinghong was taken aback. Besides the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent, there was another secret behind why he could trigger the brilliance of the heavenly Tao steel. Could it be? Jian Jinghong thought of something and suddenly felt a burning sensation on the back of his hand. As expected, he's also. Jian Jinghong thought to himself. At the same time, Ye Guqin was bathed in the brilliance of the heavenly Tao steel and felt that his comprehension ability had multiplied. Ye Guqin was not surprised by the heavenly Tao steel's reaction. It was rumored that the heavenly Tao steel emitted brilliance according to the prodigy's talent. For example, Jian Jinghong, Hua Wuxiu, and the other prodigies would receive more brilliance. Ye Guqin was a 7th-grade prodigy. Coupled with the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, he had a perfect physical body, a limitless sea of energy, and a chaotic sea of consciousness. Such talent was second to none even in the entire Nantian region. Perhaps only 10th-grade prodigies like Di Haotian were qualified to compete with him in terms of talent. In addition to this reason, Ye Guqin's hand was also burning. There seemed to be a sword-shaped insignia on the back of his hand, but it was not very obvious in the brilliance. As expected, he's also. Ye Guqin also sensed Jian Jinghong at the same time. Jian Jinghong was also a 9th-generation sword master sequence. It seems that the sequence insignia will give the heavenly Tao steel additional support. Could it be that the heavenly Tao steel is also related to the sword master sequence? Ye Guqin could not help but guess. However, Ye Guqin's priority was still to cultivate. He sat cross-legged around the heavenly Tao steel and began to comprehend. What the hell? Even Ouyang Fengyun's expression turned ugly. How much can you gain in half a month? Shangguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the others did not think much of it. Then, many prodigies also calmed down and made the best use of the remaining time. Another 7 days passed. Some prodigies tried to touch the heavenly Tao steel after comprehending the swordsmanship. They wanted to enter the heavenly Tao steel and create their own swordsmanship. However, without exception, all of them were bounced off. Only those who had the ability to create their own swordsmanship could enter the space of the heavenly Tao steel. I wonder if there's anyone who can create their own swordsmanship and trigger the heavenly Tao steel's light. Yeah, I'm curious too. Previously, when someone created their own swordsmanship and triggered the heavenly Tao steel's light, the highest was a white brilliance of 500 feet. This time, Jian Jinghong and Hua Wuxiu both have a chance to break the record of 500 feet. It's a pity that Duge Wubai only has half a month. It's probably difficult for him to digest the swordsmanship that he comprehended previously, let alone create his own swordsmanship. Outside the ancient sword tomb, the crowd discussed fervently. At this moment, Hua Wuxiu, who had been sitting cross-legged, finally stood up and stepped towards the heavenly Tao steel. His gaze was deep as he placed his hand on it. In an instant, a light flashed and Hua Wuxiu's body was pulled into the space of the heavenly Tao steel. Hua Wuxiu can really create his own swordsmanship. Seeing this scene, the crowd was in an uproar. Chapter 1035. It was not easy to create one's own swordsmanship. It required one to be extremely talented and have a deep understanding of swordsmanship. Generally speaking, those who were able to create their own swordsmanship were top experts who had dabbled in the power of law, or sword Tao masters who had been immersed in swordsmanship for more than a few decades. Hua Wuxiu was only in his 20s. Although everyone had guessed that Hua Wuxiu might create his own swordsmanship, they were still amazed when they saw it for themselves. I wonder how much light Hua Wuxiu's self-created swordsmanship will be able to attract from the heavenly Tao stone tablet. It doesn't matter how much light it gets, it's still better than ours. The surrounding sky prides were envious. No matter how powerful the swordsmanship was, as long as it could be created, it was enough to make others envious. It seems that Wuxiu will have a great harvest this time. Hua Mo nodded in satisfaction. Although Hua Mo was a little unhappy that Ye Guqin had comprehended the proud divine continent's unique swordsmanship. Fortunately, Hua Wuxiu still had the ability to create his own swordsmanship. What about Ye Guqin? With only half a month left, it was difficult to consolidate the swordsmanship that he had comprehended, let alone create his own swordsmanship. What a pity. Dugu Wubai is a natural sage. If he had enough time, he might be able to create his own swordsmanship. Outside the ancient sword tomb, some martial artists were discussing among themselves. They felt that it was a pity. After all, Yiguchen's performance at Mount Saint Crossing had really amazed everyone. Bei Xian Elder and the rest sighed and did not say anything. After all, they could not force Yiguchen to break the records in all 3 secret realms. That would be too much. Another 2 days passed. On this day, the heavenly Tao stone tablets suddenly released a dazzling white light. The light condensed into a pillar of light that shot up into the sky. Hua Wuxiu has successfully created his own swordsmanship. The surrounding sky prides could not help but exclaim. The dazzling white pillar of light rose up into the sky and finally stopped at a range of 6,000 feet. Hua Wuxiu has broken the record. Inside and outside the ancient sword tomb, everyone's eyes were fixed on the white light pillar that gushed towards the heavens. The height of the light pillar represented the power and complexity of the self-created sword art. The more complex and profound the sword art was, the more powerful it would be, and the higher the height of the light beam would be. Among the previous generations of geniuses, the record was 5,000 feet. Today, however, Hua Wuxiu had broken the previous record. This also meant that the moves he created were more complicated and more powerful than those of his predecessors. In front of the heavenly Tao stone tablet, a burst of light surged, and Hua Wuxiu walked out with his hands behind his back. Hua Wuxiu remained calm on the surface as he heard the exclamations and the gazes of tens of thousands of people. However, the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. The situation was as he had expected. His trump card had been completely perfected, and it had even helped him break the record. He looked at Yiguchen and said calmly, "Dugu Wubai, it seems that I'm going to win back 10% in the ancient sword tomb." Hua Wuxiu had said that he would compete with Yiguchen again in the ancient sword tomb at the end of the 5 academies competition. Now, it seemed that he had indeed won back 1 round. However, Yiguchen was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, shrouded in the light, and focused on comprehending and cultivating. He did not respond to Hua Wuxiu at all. Hua Wuxiu shook his head with a cold expression and did not say anything. Not far away, Shengguan Jingshan, Yin Zhu, and the others said sarcastically, "This Dugu Wubai is so arrogant when he wins, and pretends to be deaf and dumb when he loses. He really has the prestige of a natural saint." Yes, is this the reputation of a natural saint? Ouyang Fengyun sneered. With these people taking the lead, the other prodigies from the aristocratic families also mocked and ridiculed. For a moment, all kinds of unpleasant words were said. The faces of the Sacred Cliff College disciples flushed red. Yiguchen defeated all the prodigies in the 5 academies competition. Why didn't these people mock him? Now, he had to endure such ridicule just because he was slightly inferior. Enough. Suddenly, a voice sounded, and the surroundings quieted down. A figure stood up. It was Jian Jinghong. He was one of the most prestigious people in the Sword Dynasty. Therefore, the prodigies from the aristocratic families were also a little afraid of him. Jian Jinghong raised his sword-like eyebrows and said to Hua Wuxiu, "Hua Wuxiu, you're not the only one who can create his own sword technique." After saying that, Jian Jinghong also stepped forward and placed his hand on the heavenly Tao tablet. The next moment, he was also pulled into the space of the heavenly Tao tablet. As expected, Jian Jinghong has the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent. It's more likely that he can create his own sword technique. The prodigies from the itinerant cultivator camp were also shocked. The expressions of the people from Sacred Cliff College eased a little, but they were still not very happy. After all, Jian Jinghong was only helping them out. They were more willing to see Yiguchen slap the faces of the aristocratic family's prodigies. However, under such circumstances, even the people from Sacred Cliff College felt that Yiguchen probably did not have much time left. In the blink of an eye, another 2 days passed. There were only 4 days left before the ancient sword tomb closed. At a certain moment, the heavenly Tao tablet trembled. A white brilliance surged out and rushed into the sky. It's coming! Everyone inside and outside the ancient sword tomb stared intently. 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, under everyone's gaze, the white light pillar finally stopped at about 700 feet. Hiss! Many gasps could be heard from all directions. Not only did Jian Jinghong create his own sword technique, but its power and complexity were even more powerful than Hua Wuxiu's. Is this the power of having a sword intent at the creation level? What a monstrous talent! Everyone exclaimed. Only someone like Jian Jinghong is worthy of being my target, Suki Miyazaki. Suki Miyazaki's delicate body trembled slightly, and her eyes were filled with shock. Jian Jinghong's performance was indeed stunning. Even Hua Wuxiu was overshadowed by him. She then glanced at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, like an old monk meditating. As expected, there's still a gap between Dugu Wubai and Jian Jinghong, Suki Miyazaki thought to herself. How is it, Hua Wuxiu? Jian Jinghong's figure reappeared in front of the heavenly Tao tablet, and his lips curled into a smile. You're not much better than me. Let's see how it goes in the battle for the sword heir. Hua Wuxiu was expressionless. Although Jian Jinghong's performance was slightly better than his, it was still acceptable. Moreover, he had already overshadowed Yi Guqin. Hua Wuxiu was satisfied. Time passed by. Soon, there was only 1 day left before the ancient sword tomb closed. And Yi Guqin was still as unmoving as a rock. It's over. Hua Wuxiu smiled faintly. Yi Guqin was still a human, not a god. Miracles could not happen every time. What a pity. Jian Jinghong was also slightly disappointed. As for the people from Sacred Cliff College, although they were not dejected, they were still in low spirits. The geniuses from the aristocratic families were full of mockery. Many times, when you were creating miracles, as long as you did something slightly wrong, you would immediately be belittled and looked down on. Ha, Bei Xian Elder, prepare the token. The ancient sword tomb is about to close, Elder Hua Mo said with a smile. I don't need you to remind me, Bei Xian Elder said unhappily. And at this moment, Yi Guqin, who had been meditating like an old monk, trembled slightly and opened his eyes. There's only 1 day left. It should be enough. Yi Guqin muttered to himself. Chapter 1036. Outside the ancient sword tomb, Hua Mo, Yinli, and the other academy elders stepped forward and took their positions. They were waiting for the day to end so that they could close the ancient sword tomb. Bei Xian Elder let out a long sigh and stepped forward helplessly. However, at that moment, a commotion broke out within the ancient sword tomb. Outside the ancient sword tomb, everyone was attracted by the clamor and turned their attention to it. It seems to be Dugu Wubai. He finally woke up from his meditation. What's the use of waking up now? He has already missed the best opportunity. Everyone was discussing fervently. At that moment, beside the heavenly Tao stone tablet, Yi Guqin finally opened his eyes and stood up. The corners of his mouth curved into a faint smile. He was obviously very satisfied with his cultivation over the past few days. The time Yi Guqin spent beside the heavenly Tao stone tablet was far less than the other prodigies. In fact, it was even less than Hua Wuxiu and Jian Jinghong. However, Yi Guqin received the most support from the heavenly Tao stone tablet. In addition, he had the help of his sword Devil Insight and the ancient Tree of Enlightenment. He had made great progress in his cultivation during this period of time. He had already comprehended most of the 4 forms of the 10,000 God Tribulation, Heaven's End. Once he entered the divine dwelling stage, he would be able to use this move. Yi Guqin could only use 108 leaves of the reincarnation sword Lotus previously. Now, he could use 240 leaves, which was not far from mastering 360 leaves. Yi Guqin had also comprehended 2 or 3 forms of the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique and could use them directly. Finally, the most important thing was naturally the ultimate sword domain. Yiguchen could now completely stack 2 sword Dao domains together. It was very stable. Yiguchen had also gained a preliminary understanding of the fusion of 3 sword domains. He only needed to perfect it in the future. It could be said that Yiguchen had gained a lot from the ancient sword tomb this time. How could he not be happy? Congratulations, senior brother Dugu. You've made great progress in your cultivation. The surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples, as well as some individual cultivators, saluted Yiguchen. Even if Yiguchen was unable to create his own sword technique, being able to comprehend the proud Divine Continent's 8 extreme reincarnation sword art was already shocking enough. Dugu Wubai, to be able to comprehend Alliance Master Proud Divine Prefecture's ultimate technique, you truly are capable. Jian Jingheng smiled. The prodigies from the itinerant cultivator camp had a tacit understanding and did not mention anything about creating their own sword techniques. Dugu Wubai, there's only 1 day left before the ancient sword tomb closes. Let's make some preparations and head out. Ling Moyin stepped forward and said. The reason why she said this was because she didn't want Yiguchen to be affected by gossip. Dugu Wubai, are you leaving just like that? Shengguan Jingshan said coldly. You're a bit like a dog with its tail between its legs. Ouyang Fengyun's tone was bitter. During the 5 Academies tournament, they had ganged up on Yiguchen and failed in the end. Their reputation had been ruined. Now, they naturally wanted to take revenge. That's right, Dugu Wubai. Isn't there still 1 day left? Maybe you can create your own sword technique? Yin Ju sneered. Immediately, there was a lot of gossip among the prodigies from the aristocratic families. Their words were full of contempt and sarcasm for Yiguchen. You! The rogue prodigies glared at them angrily. Dugu Wubai, although there's only 1 day left, it's fine to give it a try. At least it's not a wasted trip, Hua Wuxiu said with a calm expression. Although it didn't seem to be sarcastic, it made people feel uncomfortable. Yiguchen tilted his head slightly and glanced at Hua Wuxiu, Shengguan Jingshan, and the others with some doubts in his eyes. You guys are very strange, Yiguchen said. What do you mean? Hua Wuxiu's eyes narrowed. Which ear of yours heard that I'm leaving? Yiguchen asked. You mean, you're really going to try? Yin Ju sounded extremely surprised. He had said that just to make fun of Yiguchen. He didn't think that Yiguchen would embarrass himself. After all, creating one's own sword technique in a day was almost impossible. Isn't there still 1 day left? Yiguchen shook his head slightly. He couldn't understand what these people were thinking. He stepped forward and approached the Heavenly Dao tablet. This scene was also seen by the people outside the ancient sword tomb. What's going on? Is Dugu Wubai approaching the Heavenly Dao tablet? There's only 1 day left. What else does he want to do? The people outside the ancient sword tomb looked at each other with puzzlement. Could it be that Yiguchen just wanted to see the space of the Heavenly Dao tablet? But if he didn't have the opportunity and inspiration to create his own sword technique, he wouldn't be able to enter. Even Elder Bei Xian widened his eyes in shock, and his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. What is Dugu doing? Bei Xian Elder was also puzzled. Interesting. Is he trying to save some face? Or is Dugu Wubai able to create his own sword technique in 1 day? Hua Mo, Yinli, and the other elders couldn't help but laugh when they heard this. Because this kind of behavior was really overestimating himself. Are you done? Bei Xian Elder frowned and shouted. He was extremely disgusted by Hua Mo's arrogant behavior. What's wrong? You won't let me say it? If Dugu Wubai can really create his own sword technique today, then this old man will kneel in front of you and kowtow 3 times. Hua Mo was in a good mood and couldn't help but exclaim. You! Bei Xian Elder blew his beard and stared at him, but he didn't say anything. Because, this was really impossible. Because of Yiguchen's actions, the ancient sword tomb was in an uproar. Yiguchen looked calm and composed. He walked into the Heavenly Tao tablet and slowly placed his hand on it. If there was an opportunity and ability to create his own sword technique, the Heavenly Tao tablet would pull him into its space. If there wasn't, he would be bounced off. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, just as the crowd from the aristocratic families were about to smile mockingly, a voice suddenly rang out. A ray of light surged and Yiguchen's figure was pulled into it. Everyone was stunned, everyone was petrified, the sneers on the faces of Shengguan Jingshen and the others froze like ice cubes. Hua Wuxiu's heart skipped a beat. Yiguchen actually had the ability to create his own sword technique. Some of the prodigies from the ancient sword families looked at each other and swallowed their saliva. Hua Mo was even more stunned. He rubbed his eyes as if he didn't see clearly. He was still in a daze. Even Bei Xian Elder couldn't believe it. However, in an instant, a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. In the sky, Saber 9 smiled faintly when he saw this. When Brother Dugu surprises everyone, that's when he's going to create another miracle. No, that's impossible. It must be a coincidence. Even if he enters the space of the Heavenly Tao tablet, he might not be able to comprehend it. After all, he only has 1 day, Hua Mo said as if he was comforting himself. He wasn't the only one. Most of the people thought the same. The time was too short. Even someone as talented as Jian Jinghong took several days to comprehend the Heavenly Tao tablet. Furthermore, he spent more time in the Heavenly Tao tablet than Yiguchen. Are you trying to be mysterious again? Hua Wuxiu didn't want to believe it. Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and Ouyang Fengyun didn't believe it either. Chapter 1037. Not to mention Yiguchen's enemies. Even some of the Sacred Cliff College disciples were in disbelief. It wasn't that they didn't believe in Yiguchen's ability, but that he didn't have enough time. If Yiguchen had more time to meditate like Jian Jinghong and Hua Wuxiu, many people would believe that Yiguchen could create his own swordsmanship. However, 1 day was the limit of the Taiji limit. Since ancient times, there had never been such a record in the Sword Dynasty. No matter what, at least Senior Dugu proved himself. He has the ability to create his own swordsmanship, some of the Sacred Cliff College disciples said. It's just a waste of effort. The geniuses regained their composure. If Yiguchen had a few more days, he might have succeeded. But unfortunately, inside and outside the ancient sword tomb, everyone had different thoughts. Some were curious, some were watching a show, some were looking forward to it. At this moment, Yiguchen had entered a mysterious place. The surrounding void was grotesque and variegated, with thousands of colors. It was very strange. Is this the space inside the Heavenly Tao stone tablet? Yiguchen muttered. The moment he entered this place, he felt a special Taoist rhyme. In his mind, it was as if thousands of inspirations emerged. All kinds of sword techniques and martial arts flashed in his consciousness. In this Heavenly Tao space, Yiguchen's thinking was indeed more than 10 times sharper. Because of this, he had more opportunities to create his own swordsmanship. My chaotic spiritual sea is different from ordinary people's. Maybe I can get more support. Yiguchen thought. He immediately activated his chaotic spiritual sea, and his chaotic soul power spread out. As his chaotic soul power spread, Yiguchen's thinking became sharper, and his inspirations increased. It's really effective. Yiguchen was excited. The support he received in this Heavenly Tao space was indeed related to the strength of his soul power. Not only was Yiguchen's sea of consciousness far superior to ordinary people, but he also possessed the rare primal chaos soul power. For example, if Jian Jinghong and Hua Wuxiu were to receive a 10-fold increase in the Heavenly Tao space, they would receive a 10-fold increase. But now, Yiguchen had received an increase of 20 times, or even 30 to 40 times. With such a boost, it was not impossible for Yiguchen to create his own swordsmanship within a day. Next, I need to decide on the direction of my self-created swordsmanship, Yiguchen muttered to himself. In fact, before coming to the ancient sword tomb, Yiguchen had already decided to create his own sword technique. Having made up his mind, Yiguchen closed his eyes and began to comprehend. In his mind, a hazy, immortal-like figure appeared. It was Situ Hongxue. Creating one's own swordsmanship required an opportunity. Even some Sword Dao grandmasters, who had been immersed in Sword Dao for hundreds of years, could not create swordsmanship for no reason. Those top-notch Sword Dao grandmasters who created their own swordsmanship would carefully comprehend the various states of the world and the ups and downs of life. In short, for a true Sword Dao grandmaster, the Sword Dao was the Sword Dao. It was the Sword Dao grandmaster's comprehension of the various states of the world. And for Yiguchen, the thing that touched him the most at this stage was undoubtedly his love and hate relationship with Situ Hongxue. Moreover, Yiguchen had also created his own sword technique, Sentimental Heavens, for this reason. Sentimental Heavens was only a scattered move. However, Yiguchen felt that this move could be expanded further. Therefore, Yiguchen decided to continue comprehending it in depth. After the elite meeting, Situ Hongxue left a hairpin with the words, Sentimental Heavens, Old Heavens, engraved on it. In the heavenly wasteland plains, Situ Hongxue was resolute in facing Grandma Withered Flower's attack. She placed the tip of the sword horizontally across her jade neck and said those words, having seen the vast ocean, water is no more. Apart from Mount Wu, clouds are no more. Scenes from the past surfaced in his mind once again. A mysterious aura enveloped Yiguchen's entire body. All sorts of insights surged into his mind. Just as Yiguchen was immersed in this enlightenment, time passed bit by bit in the outside world. A day's time was too short, and it passed in the blink of an eye. In the ancient sword tomb, many of the prodigies did not choose to leave. Instead, they stayed where they were, waiting to witness the final outcome. Although to most of them, the outcome was self-evident. It's indeed a waste of time. Ouyang Fengyun and the other prodigies could not help but laugh when they saw that the Heaven Dao stone tablet did not move at all. Although Hua Wuxiu did not say anything, the faint smile on his face revealed his inner thoughts. On the other hand, Ling Moyin, Han Lingxian, and the others were very nervous. Although Mu Xingzu believed in Yiguchen's ability the most, she was also a little nervous at this moment. I'm afraid even Jian Jinghong can't do it in a day's time. Suki Miyazaki was not very optimistic. Outside the ancient sword tomb, Hua Mo's mood changed from the initial nervousness to calmness. Now, he was vaguely amused. How ridiculous. I was actually shocked just now. Thinking back to his reaction when he saw Yiguchen enter the Heaven Dao stone tablet, Hua Mo felt that it was ridiculous. His worries were groundless. Bei Xian Elder was silent. The glimmer of hope that had just surged in his heart was slowly extinguished as time passed, like a candle in the wind. Maybe it's still too much. Bei Xian Elder sighed. Time passed, and soon, it was time to close the ancient sword tomb. Old man Bei Xian, it's about time. Hua Mo smiled proudly. Sigh. Bei Xian Elder's face stiffened, but he still took out the token. Prodigies in the ancient sword tomb, the tomb is about to close. Get ready to come out, Elder Ainli shouted. As for Yiguchen, when they activated the sealing array, the Heaven Dao stone tablet would naturally expel him. Of course, that also meant that Yiguchen had failed. It's over. The prodigies on the side of the aristocratic families relaxed. They were really afraid that there would be a twist in the end. Boring. Hua Wuxiu shook his head lightly. Although it was expected that they would surpass Yiguchen, it was still a little boring. What's there to be proud of? Seeing the prodigies of the aristocratic families, the disciples of Sacred Cliff College felt a little aggrieved. However, they had no choice. After all, Yiguchen was still a little weaker. Then, all the prodigies turned around and prepared to leave the ancient sword tomb. However, at that moment, all the prodigies in the ancient sword tomb felt the ground beneath their feet tremble. What's going on? All the prodigies looked at each other. This tremor is coming from the Heaven Dao stone tablet. Suddenly, a prodigy from Sacred Cliff College exclaimed. Then, all the prodigies turned around and stared at the Heaven Dao stone tablet. Jian Jingheng, Hua Wuxiu, Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, Ouyang Fengyun, Mu Xingzu, Ling Moyin, Xuanlian, all the prodigies turned around and stared at the stone tablet. The Heaven Dao stone tablet made a rumbling sound as if the great Dao was rumbling. Many natural Dao patterns appeared on the surface of the stone tablet. They contained endless brilliance, as if they were accumulating power. Could it be? Hua Wuxiu's heart sank. Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the rest were also stunned. They kept repeating the word impossible in their hearts. Outside the ancient sword tomb, everyone also saw the abnormality of the Heaven Dao stone tablet. It can't be, the smile on Hua Mo's face froze before he could retract it. Bei Xian Elder was stunned at first. Then, his eyes filled with ecstasy. Chapter 1038. Inside the space of the heavenly Dao steel. The clouds around Yiguchen surged, and the scenes began to change. Situ Hongxue was in every scene. Her entanglement, her complexity, her helplessness, her love, hate, and infatuation. It had been a long time since they parted in the Tianhuang Plains. Yiguchen did not know how Situ Hongxue was doing now. Was she doing well in the Supreme Immortal Valley? At this moment, Yiguchen was filled with emotions, and sword intent filled the air around him. He suddenly opened his eyes, a pair of deep black eyes, with a wisp of vicissitudes and a wisp of helplessness. A sigh slowly fell from the corner of his mouth. Hongxue, this sword was created for you. As Yiguchen's voice fell, the chaotic sea of consciousness in his mind began to spin crazily. The terrifying chaotic soul power seemed to have turned into a vast and ethereal sea, surging out. Yiguchen held the nine-dragon thunder prison in his hand and attacked at the same time. Endless sword chi burst out and merged with the chaotic soul power, as if revealing an endless sea of mountains and clouds. Once you've crossed the sea, it's no longer water. Apart from Mount Wu, it's no longer clouds. This sword move is called Mount Wu Vast Sea. Yiguchen muttered to himself. The Mount Wu Vast Sea sword swung out, causing the entire space of the heavenly Dao steel to shake. This sword was the condensation of Yiguchen's emotions, and at the same time, its power surpassed the first move. If the first move, Pathos of Heaven, used that kind of sorrowful and sentimental concept to make the opponent absent-minded, then the second move, Mount Wu Vast Sea, was Yiguchen's fusion of chaotic soul power into the sword move. This sword could not only injure the opponent's physical body, but also hurt the opponent's sea of consciousness. This was the most powerful part of this move. At this moment, in the picture of mountains and seas where soul power and sword chi intertwined, there seemed to be a hazy and beautiful figure appearing vaguely, like a flying immortal from beyond the heavens. That is. Yiguchen's mind trembled. That immortal-like figure hadn't appeared yet. It was extremely hazy, unable to be seen clearly. But how could Yiguchen not know who she was? So, there's a third style. Yiguchen was slightly absent-minded. Apart from the emotions of the heavens and the vast sea of sorcerer, there was definitely another move. However, right now, Yiguchen still lacked an opportunity. Therefore, that figure was hazy and could not manifest. Yiguchen sighed and said, I will definitely comprehend that move. Once I comprehend all three moves, I will give this sword technique to you, Hong Shui. He felt indebted to Situ Hongxue. This set of swordsmanship could be considered an insignificant compensation. Right now, Yiguchen had even thought of the name of the third style. He only lacked an epiphany and an opportunity to comprehend it. Subsequently, Yiguchen suppressed the emotions in his heart. His eyes flickered as he said, I wonder how this move of mine compares to Jian Jingheng and Hua Wuxiu. Yiguchen thought to himself. At the same time, in the outside world, everyone present seemed to have been petrified, their eyes dull. The heavenly Dao stone tablet burst forth with an unprecedented light. That white pillar of light gushed into the sky like a geyser. 1,000 feet. 2,000 feet. 3,000 feet. That white pillar of light did not decline at all. Seeing this scene, the entire place was dead silent. In the end, the white light pillar only came to a stop when it reached a height of 10,000 feet. The light of 10,000 feet illuminated the entire ancient sword tomb. Not to mention the surroundings of the ancient sword tomb, even the eye-catching and dazzling pillar of light could be seen from thousands of miles away. Shock! Shock! Extreme shock! After being stunned for a moment, the people from Sacred Cliff College, Mu Xingzu, Ling Moyin, and the other girls were overjoyed. Yi Guqin had succeeded in the end. Tell me, am I dreaming? Ouyang Fengyun suddenly grabbed a prodigy from the aristocratic families with a ferocious expression. It doesn't seem to be a dream. That prodigy was also stunned, his lips trembling. How was this possible? Shangguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the others felt as if they were in a dream. They could not react at all. Hua Wuxiu's faint smile and calmness completely disappeared. His knuckles turned white as he clenched his fists. Even Jian Jinghong's mouth was slightly agape. After a long while, he spat out a sentence. Is this the talent of a natural saint? What a monster! To be able to create one's own swordsmanship within a day was already an incredible feat. Most importantly, Yi Guqin's swordsmanship had broken Jian Jinghong's and Hua Wuxiu's records. Their records were 6,000 feet and 7,000 feet, while Yi Guqin's was 10,000 feet. The difference was not just 100 or 200 feet. It was a huge gap. Suki Miyazaki's mouth was slightly agape. Her lips trembled slightly, but she could not say anything. The shock in her beautiful eyes eventually turned into a complicated feeling and a slightly bitter smile. She could not compare to Mu Xingzu's master. Outside the ancient sword tomb, Bei Xian elder rubbed his eyes, then looked up to the sky and laughed non-stop. Yi Guqin had not lost his reputation as a natural saint. He had still created a new record. On the other side, Hua Mo, Yinli, and the other elders from the aristocratic families all looked like dead people. Especially Hua Mo, he felt so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He felt as if he was dreaming. At this moment, everyone outside had all kinds of emotions. In the space of the Heavenly Tao Tablet, Yi Guqin thought that he would be directly teleported out by the Heavenly Tao Tablet. But that was not the case. What's going on? Yi Guqin frowned slightly. At this moment, the void suddenly distorted slightly, and a milky white cobblestone appeared. It was covered with mysterious Tao patterns, and looked like a miniature version of the Heavenly Tao Tablet. What is this? Yi Guqin raised his hand and took it. This stone was the same as the Heavenly Tao Tablet, and it had a mysterious aura. At this moment, the back of Yi Guqin's hand suddenly became hot again, and the golden sword-shaped insignia of the elite sequence appeared. Why is the sword faction sequence insignia reacting? Is the Heavenly Tao Tablet related to the sword faction? Yi Guqin thought to himself. He could not help but think of the Heavenless Sword Realm, the only one among the 4 great mystic realms that he had not entered. That was also the inheritance ground of the 7th generation sword faction. After thinking about it, Yi Guqin could not figure out the connection between the two for the time being. He simply put the stone into his origin ring. Then, Yi Guqin was teleported out by the Heavenly Tao Tablet. As soon as Yi Guqin stepped out of the space of the Heavenly Tao Tablet, countless gazes were directed at him. Yi Guqin only saw his result now. The light pillar of 10,000 feet far exceeded that of Jian Jinghong and Hua Wuxiu. Could it be because of the light pillar that I was able to obtain that stone? Yi Guqin thought to himself. He was not surprised by this result. This was because the power of Mount Wu Vast Ocean was definitely stronger than that of Pathos of Heaven. Moreover, this sword technique had the potential to be further developed. It was not over with just one move. Master, you're too strong. Mu Xingzu's beautiful eyes curved into crescents as she ran excitedly to Yi Guqin's side. The rest of the Sacred Cliff College disciples also looked at Yi Guqin with incomparable fanaticism in their eyes, as if they were looking at a god. Ling Moyin and Han Lingxian looked at Yi Guqin with a trace of hidden longing in their eyes. On the contrary, the prodigies from the aristocratic families all had unnatural expressions. The ridicule and arrogance from before seemed to have turned into invisible slaps that ruthlessly slapped their faces. My result shouldn't be considered bad, right? Yiguchen raised his eyebrows slightly as his gaze swept across Hua Wuxiu, Shangguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, Ouyang Fengyun, and the others. For a moment, the prodigies from the aristocratic families were incomparably embarrassed, and their cheeks were burning. Chapter 1039. Yiguchen's performance was beyond everyone's expectations. It could be said that it was completely unexpected. Who would have thought that Yiguchen would be able to create his own swordsmanship in just one day? Not only that, the swordsmanship he created even broke Hua Wuxiu's and Jian Jinghong's records. That was a little too much. How could the other prodigies live? Does Dugu Wubai not want to save face for the other prodigies? Outside the ancient sword tomb, the crowd was stunned. Some martial artists muttered to themselves with dazed expressions. Hua Wuxiu's face was a little pale. Although he did not directly ridicule Yiguchen, his attitude was obvious. Yiguchen's performance was no different from rubbing his face against the ground. Next time, before you ridicule him, think about it first. Our big brother Dugu is not someone who can be provoked by just any cat or dog. Kong Kong added fuel to the fire, mercilessly mocking him. These words almost made Shangguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the others vomit blood. Was he implying that they were nobodies? However, they could not refute him. Because Yiguchen had indeed slapped them in the face. Thinking of this, all the prodigies who had ridiculed Yiguchen earlier were extremely sullen. Their faces turned red, but they could not say anything to refute him. I don't think I'm surprised at all. Kenpo smiled and sighed in the sky. What a monster. Even Jian Shi muttered. Of course, even so, her first choice for Jiankui was still Jian Shisan. However, Dugu Wubai's status in the hearts of the other sword sons rose again. After that, Yiguchen and the others also left the ancient sword tomb. The 5 elders activated the tokens and closed the ancient sword tomb once again. After 2 months, the ancient sword tomb probably wouldn't open again for a long time. Ha, my young friend Dugu, you did a good job. Bei Xian elder laughed heartily. His face was full of joy. In stark contrast to Bei Xian elder, Hua Mo, Yinli, and the other elders of the aristocratic families were all present. Especially Hua Mo. At this moment, his face looked as if it was smeared with ashes from the bottom of a pot. Bei Xian elder couldn't help but cast a mocking look at him. Who was the one who said that if Dugu Wubai could create his own swordsmanship, he would kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times? As these words were spoken, the gazes of the surrounding cultivators all landed on Hua Mo in unison. Old ghost Bei Xian, you. Hua Mo's face twitched as his chest heaved up and down. He pointed a trembling finger at Bei Xian elder. Didn't you say that you would agree to my request earlier? Are you afraid to keep your promise now? Bei Xian elder continued, feeling extremely happy. You, humph. Hua Mo's face was extremely ugly. Many of the surrounding cultivators didn't dare to talk openly because of the Hua family. However, the mocking looks in their eyes still made Hua Mo feel like vomiting blood in his heart. Let's go. Hua Mo flung his sleeves as his face turned red. He didn't want to stay here any longer. Hua Wuxiu was expressionless as he glanced at Yiguchen and said faintly, the one who has the last laugh is the winner. Dugu Wubai, we will see the result in the Sword Sun battle. Hua Wuxiu didn't argue. He had completely lost all his face today. The only chance for him to turn the tables was in the Sword Sun battle. As long as he killed Yiguchen in the Thousand Demons' Nest, the Sacred Dynasty's inheritance, he would naturally be able to turn the tables. Moreover, he wasn't the only one who wanted Yiguchen dead. There was also the mysterious and unfathomable Jiankui. Therefore, no matter what the result was, Yiguchen wouldn't be able to walk out of the Sacred Dynasty's inheritance alive. At the thought of this, Hua Wuxiu's lips curled into a cold smile. It was still unknown who would be the winner. Hua Mo led a group of Hua family members and left in a hurry. Their backs were somewhat embarrassed. Sun Moon College and Long River College couldn't stay any longer and left directly. In the end, the disciples of Sacred Cliff College cheered. Yiguchin was already a godlike existence in their eyes. Alright, everyone, let's go back to the college and prepare for the Sword Sun battle. Bei Xian Elder waved his sleeves and said. Yiguchin had achieved great success in the ancient sword tomb this time. He had obtained the upper-class emperor-level sword technique, the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique. He had also improved his trump cards, such as 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Reincarnation Sword Lotus, and Ultimate Sword Realm. He had also created an even more powerful move, the Vast Sea of Sorcery. He had also obtained a mysterious stone in the end. All in all, Yiguchin had gained a lot. He was even more confident about the Sword Sun battle that was to come. It shouldn't be too long before the opening of the Prodigy battlefield. I must become the Sword Sun in this sword battle. Yiguchin had made up his mind. No one could stop him from becoming the Sword Sun. After that, Yiguchin returned to Sacred Cliff College and entered the final stage of cultivation and consolidation. As expected, the incident in the ancient sword tomb had spread throughout the Sword Dynasty again. Yiguchin had created an unprecedented record in the 3 secret realms. For a moment, he was in the limelight. On a high mountain, Jinkui stood with a pagoda in his hand. His dark golden hair fluttered in the wind. The bronze mask on his face made him look even more mysterious. A few figures appeared in the void around him. Jinkui, are you ready? There must be no accidents this time, another voice said. These voices blended into the void and were very ethereal. But without exception, they all exuded the aura of a false saint. They were false saint experts from some aristocratic families. Don't worry. I've been waiting for this opportunity for too long. There will be no problems. The Sword Dynasty will change the world and usher in a new era. Jinkui said proudly. His ambition was boundless. That's fine. This is the deal between you and our aristocratic families. However, Dugu Wubai must die no matter what. An incomparably cold voice came from the void again. If Yiguchin was here, he would have recognized that the voice belonged to Hua Yuntao. Don't worry. Dugu Wubai is a sharp sword. If he can't submit to me and be used by me, then I can only break him. Jinkui's murderous aura filled the sky as if it was going to freeze the void. In another part of the Sword Dynasty, a figure stood alone on a lonely cliff. He wore a strange purple mask on his face, and his purple hair fluttered without wind. His hands were behind his back, and his whole person had a kind of aura that could swallow mountains and rivers. This kind of power was not inferior to Jinkui at all. It even gave off a feeling that he was born to be superior. It was the mysterious genius who ranked first on the sword ranking, Z. Jinkui, Jian Jingheng, Jian Shisan, Hua Wuxiu, Dugu Wubai. Which one of you can bring me an unexpected surprise? After all, other than Di Haotian and the other evildoers, I haven't met a worthy opponent in a long time. Z muttered to himself. He wore a purple mask on his face and had purple hair, so he was called Z by the people of the Sword Dynasty. No one knew who Z's real identity was. He rarely appeared in the Sword Dynasty. This time, Z finally decided to take action. He whistled, and in the distant sky, a huge dragon-shaped monster flapped its wings and flew over. It was a powerful monster with a dragon's head and a pair of bat-like wings. In a flash, he stepped onto the monster's back. Purple-winged bat drake, go! Z roared. The purple-winged bat drake raised its head and let out a dragon's roar, then flew in a certain direction. It was the direction of the myriad demon's nest. Chapter 1040. The Sword Dynasty didn't quiet down after the ancient sword tomb incident. Instead, it was surging like the eve of a dynasty's revolution. The aristocratic families and the wandering cultivators were like fire and water. When the Sword Dynasty was first established, it was formed by many wandering cultivators and aristocratic families. The position of Sword Dao Alliance leader was held by the wandering cultivators and the aristocratic families in turn. But as time passed, the aristocratic families' ambitions grew. They were no longer satisfied with sharing power with the wandering cultivators. The power of the Sword Dynasty should be in the hands of the aristocratic families. This conflict reached its peak after the Sword Dao Alliance leader, Proud Continent, was trapped in the skyless Sword Realm for 5 years. Even with the suppression of heavenly sentiment, it could only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. In addition, there was pressure from the War God Dynasty, Maluo Dynasty, and Tyrannical Blade Dynasty. The entire Sword Dynasty seemed to be stable on the surface, but there was already a storm brewing inside. As the time of the Sword Sun battle drew closer, the storm grew bigger and bigger. The Alliance leader has been in seclusion for 5 years. Something must have happened to him. In this way, the Jinkui position in the Sword Sun battle will be crucial. If it falls into the hands of the aristocratic families, then the Sword Dao Alliance will be completely controlled by them. There were many neutral lords in the 360 ridges of the Sword Dynasty who were paying attention to the Sword Sun battle. Yiguchen's performance in the 5 Academies tournament had made some of the lords join the wandering cultivator camp. But most of the lords were still bought over by the aristocratic families. This Sword Sun battle could almost determine the future of the Sword Dynasty. Dugu Wubai will definitely die in this Sword Sun battle. It will also comfort the souls of our children in heaven. The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord and the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord both had the same thought. They couldn't personally deal with Yiguchen now. They could only hope that Yiguchen would die in the Sword Sun battle. On the other side, the Heavenly Wind Lord Qin Zhen was worried about Yiguchen. After all, he was the feudal lord of the itinerant cultivator faction. Naturally, he hoped to see Yiguchen and the others seize the position of Jinkui. Amidst the turmoil of the people's hearts, the entire Sword Dynasty had a feeling that a storm was coming. This state lasted for more than 2 months. The date of the Sword Sun battle was approaching. The people of the 5 academies were all ready to go. Outside Sacred Cliff College, several ships were floating in the air. Disciples were all over the place. Yiguchen, Ling Mo Shu, and Xuanlian stood at the front. Beside him stood Ling Moyin, Han Lingxian, Kong Kong, Yen Chok, and the others. As for Jiang Yan, he had already left Sacred Cliff College and returned to the Jiang family. In addition, because the location of the Sword Sun battle was in the Thousand Demon Nest, and there would be experts from other dynasties, Sacred Cliff College also sent out all of its experts this time. Bei Xian Elder and the others didn't need to be mentioned. Out of the 5 temple lords, 4 had appeared. Only 1 was left to guard the college. Great Elder Ime was also there. The most important one was Confuzi, the dean of the Divine Cliff College. He was personally leading the team this time. At this moment, Confuzi was standing on the ship. His back was hunched, his beard was long, and he held a walking stick in his hand. This seemingly ordinary crippled old man was a false saint expert whose name shook the entire Sword Dynasty. With Confuzi around, the disciples of Sacred Cliff College were inexplicably relieved. Confuzi first glanced at Yiguchen. His old eyes were filled with gratification. During the 5 Academies selection, Confuzi had already met Yiguchen. And Yiguchen didn't disappoint him. In this Sword Sun battle, apart from Jian Shisan, Jian Jinghong, and the others, the unaffiliated cultivator camp's greatest hope was on Yiguchen. Disciples of the Divine Cliff Academy, the trip to the Thousand Demon Nest Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove may be filled with unprecedented danger. I do not recommend disciples below the Divine Dwelling stage to go. Of course, if you insist on going, the Academy will do its best to protect your safety, said Master Jian. The Sword Sun battle this time was different from the past. Disciples below the Divine Dwelling stage could easily die. Of course, this didn't include Yiguchen. Dean, we're not afraid. That's right, a sword's edge is sharpened. Sacred Cliff College doesn't produce cowards. Some disciples shouted loudly. If they retreated because they were afraid of death, their future cultivation would be like that. Moreover, in this Sword Sun battle, it was very likely that they would enter the sacred dynasty's treasure. If they could obtain some opportunities, it would be very useful. Yes, those above the 5th level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge can follow, but you must act according to your strength. If you can't, then retreat. Your life is more important. Confuzi revealed a smile. He didn't want the disciples of Sacred Cliff College to be flowers in a greenhouse. Sometimes, they did need to be tempered by life and death. After a series of preparations, the entire Divine Cliff Academy's ship group rose into the sky under Jian Fuzi's lead. Their auras were boundless. This trip would determine the position of Sword Sun. At the same time, the heaven prides of the other 4 great academies also prepared to rush to the Sword Monarch Ridge. This time, the 5 great academies would travel together, led by Etian Qing, and enter the Thousand Demon Nest together with the other 3 great empires. After all, in the Thousand Demon Nest, there were demon kings comparable to human false saint experts. It would be difficult for any of the 4 great empires to suppress a group of demon kings in the Thousand Demon Nest alone. A few days later, the team from Sacred Cliff College also arrived at the Sword Monarch Ridge. Almost at the same time, the heaven prides of the other 4 great academies and various aristocratic families also gathered. Needless to say, Hua Wuxiu, Shangguan Jingshan, and the other heaven prides on the sword roll were all present. Hua Wuxiu only glanced at Yi Guqin indifferently, then looked away. At this time, there was nothing to say. Everything would be revealed in the Sword Sun battle. Shangguan Jingshan, Yin Zhu, and the others also narrowed their eyes at Yi Guqin, as if they already regarded him as a dead man. Indeed, in the eyes of outsiders, he had offended so many people, including Jin Kuei. No matter how strong Yi Guqin was, there was a limit to his strength. Faced with different gazes, Yi Guqin was calm and composed. At this time, a group of people arrived from afar. The leader was a handsome man in a white robe. He held a red umbrella in his hand and a wine gourd at his waist. His aura was calm and composed, and there was no pressure from the aura of an expert. However, it was this handsome man who suppressed the entire Sword Dynasty alone, and the 5 great pseudo-saint aristocratic families did not dare to act rashly. This person was the Sword Sovereign, Etian Qing. Beside him was a young man. It was Jian Jinghong. In addition, there was a row of 13 figures at the same time, each of them wearing a mask and emitting a dignified aura. They were the 13 Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty. Among them, the most conspicuous was naturally Jin Kuei, who stood at the front with an imposing aura. Jin Kuei glanced at Sacred Cliff College. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples turned pale and felt a little pressured. Finally, Jin Kuei's gaze fell on Yi Guqin, but he did not say a word. With Etian Qing around, no one dared to speak casually. Everyone, this trip to the Myriad Demon Nest is not only to select a Sword Son, but also to explore the Sword Dynasty's treasures. Some of the opportunities will be of great use to our Sword Dynasty. So this time, I hope everyone will do your best. May the heavens bless the Sword Dynasty and prosper forever. As soon as Etian Qing's words fell, the entire Sword Sovereign City roared and cheered. May the heavens bless the Sword Dynasty and prosper forever. Chapter 1041. The Sword Dynasty was a kingdom of sword cultivators in the South Horizon region. It could be said that it was the best home for sword cultivators apart from those overlord-level forces. The entire Sword Dynasty's sword cultivators were very united. Unfortunately, due to the perennial hostility between the rogue cultivators and the aristocratic families, as well as the proud divine continent being trapped, the Sword Dynasty was in turmoil. This also made the War God Dynasty, the Maluo Dynasty, the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty, and the other 2nd, 3rd, and 4th dynasties see an opportunity. The sage fruit that might exist in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove was a supreme treasure that all the dynasties must fight for. A single saintly Tao fruit could create a heavenly tribulation saint. A tribulation sage was the standard for an overlord-level force. Although a tribulation sage was not enough to make a dynasty reach the level of an overlord-level force. But at least it would be able to sit firmly on the throne of the 100 great dynasties. Therefore, this time, Heavenly Love placed her hopes in the hands of the prodigies. This trip to the Thousand Demon Nest is not only important for the Sword Sun battle, but also for the glory of the Sword Dynasty. Heavenly Love said. We will not disappoint the Vice Alliance leader. Hearing Heavenly Love's words, all the prodigies present, including the sword-ranking prodigies and the 13 Sword Sons, cupped their hands and shouted loudly. Yiguchen also cupped his hands slightly. As a sword cultivator, he naturally hoped that the Sword Dynasty could sit firmly on the throne of the First Dynasty. However, Yiguchen's deep eyes swept across Jinkue, Hua Wuxiu, and the other prodigies of the aristocratic families. Yiguchen might consider the overall situation of the Sword Dynasty. But it was hard to say whether Hua Wuxiu and the others would do the same. After all, Ouyang Fengyun did not care about the overall situation at the ancient Chaos Wasteland and attacked him, which caused the Sword Dynasty to lose a fragment of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. But this time, Yiguchen obviously would not show any mercy. If Ouyang Fengyun and the others did not care about the overall situation, then he did not mind using thunderous means. Alright. Everyone, prepare yourselves. 3 days later, we will head to the Myriad Demon's Nest. Heaven Feeling waved her hand and said. After that, the 5 great academies, the various aristocratic families, and the rogue cultivators all went their own way. There were a total of 10 false saints heading to the Myriad Demon's Nest. Other than Vice Alliance leader Etian Qing. On the rogue cultivator's side, there were Confuzi, Wu Hongyan, and a rogue cultivator false saint named Gu Yuanxi. Other than that, the other 6 were false saints from the aristocratic families. In addition to Hua Yuntao, there was another false saint in the Hua family, Hua Yunhai, who was a highest elder of the Hua family. The others were the head of the Shengguan family, Shengguan Bo, the deputy head of the Jiang family, Jiang Wu, the first elder of the Yin family, Yin Lengshan, and the elder of the Ouyang family, Ouyang Su. Apart from Hua Yunhai, the other 5 false saints of the aristocratic families had all appeared at Mount Saint Crossing. Of course, this was not all of the experts of the 5 fake saint families. It was only a part of them. But it also showed how deep the foundation of the experts of the fake saint families were. As expected of the Sword Dynasty, they can easily dispatch 10 false saints, but unfortunately. Yiguchen sighed in his heart. The foundation of the experts of the Sword Dynasty was indeed second to none, but there was internal division, which caused turmoil. Now, Yiguchen understood why Etian Qing was trying to rescue the proud divine state. Only by rescuing the proud divine state could they expel the disloyal ones, reorganize the Sword Way Alliance, and unite them. However, before going to the Heavenless Sword Realm to rescue the proud divine state, Yiguchen had to first obtain the identity of the Sword Sun. 3 days passed quickly. On this day, the Sword Dynasty's fleet, led by Etian Qing and the other false saints, sailed toward the direction of the Demon's Nest in a mighty manner, looking quite imposing. Almost at the same time, the War God Dynasty, the Maluo Dynasty, and the tyrannical Saber Dynasty all had their own fleet rising into the sky and sailing toward the Myriad Demon's Nest. Each team was led by several false saint experts. In addition, there were many venerables in the Celestial Palace. Of course, there were also many monstrous geniuses from each dynasty. After all, this time, the geniuses of the Sword Dynasty were almost all out, and the other 3 dynasties naturally could not send any Tom, Dick, or Harry. In a wasteland in the tyrannical Saber Dynasty, a young man in dusty clothes, holding a blood-stained ancient saber, stood indifferently in the same place. The young man's face was ordinary, and his hair was messy like wormwood, and his beard was unshaven. He looked a little sloppy. His eyes seemed to have lost all emotion and were lifeless. If Yiguchen was here, he would definitely recognize this young man. It was the saber maniac who had fought with him on the peak of the Forbidden City, Gu Zun. No, now he should be called the 7 Lethal Saber Demon, Gu Zun. After killing his master, Gu Zun's only emotion was also lost. He was like a walking corpse, wandering all the way to the tyrannical Saber Dynasty. Originally, Gu Zun had an obsession. It was to use the 7 lethal ancient saber to end Yiguchen's life. For this obsession, Guzun challenged and tempered himself day and night in the tyrannical Saber dynasty. Later on, news of Yiguchen's death spread. Not only did Guzun not feel relieved, but it made him even more miserable. What Guzun wanted was to personally end Yiguchen. But now, it was impossible. Yiguchen, how can you die? How hateful. Guzun slashed out with his saber, and the surging saber chi almost split the ground in half. At this moment, a flying boat appeared in the void. On the flying boat stood a handsome man in white with a long crystal saber on his back. He had an extraordinary aura. It was young Master Fusheng, Dao Wumeng, the holy son of the battle god Saber sect and one of the top 10 young masters of the South Sky region. Guzun, you've gained enough experience in the tyrannical Saber dynasty. Follow me back to the battle god Saber sect, said Dao Wumeng. What's the point of living if I can't end Yiguchen with my own hands? Guzun's eyes were as red as blood, and he was in extreme pain. Didn't your master say that he hopes you can be like a heavenly saber that can cut through the sky of the South Horizon region? The battlefield of prodigies is the best opportunity to prove yourself, said Dao Wumeng. Guzun could easily become a disciple of the battle god Saber sect. But the battlefield of prodigies could make Guzun famous. Hearing this, Guzun's body suddenly trembled, and his dead eyes sharpened again, filled with killing intent. That's right. Except for Yiguchen's obsession. He still had to fulfill Yubufan's last wish, and shake the South Horizon region with the name of the saber. The battlefield of prodigies, I want to participate. Guzun's voice was sonorous and cold. He left with Dao Wumeng. Although the battlefield of prodigies had not opened, he still had to go to the battle god Saber sect to cultivate. As for the sacred dynasty's inheritance in the Thousand Demon Nest, Guzun was not interested and had no intention of going. However, he did not know that his unintentional action had delayed the fated confrontation between him and Yiguchen once again. On the other side, the people of the four great dynasties had spent more than half a month on the road. Along the way, Yiguchen also learned about the situation of the other three great dynasties in detail. The prodigies on the battle god list, blood list, and saber list were definitely not to be underestimated. Yiguchen could not help but think of the pink gentleman, the gold and silver sabers, and the others he had met in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. He would probably have the chance to meet them again this time. At that time, there would be a score to settle. In addition, Princess Luoho was also likely to participate. But Yiguchen now had enough confidence and was not afraid of anyone. After more than half a month, the people of the four great dynasties finally approached the Thousand Demon Nest. Chapter 1042. The Thousand Demons Nest was not located in any dynasty. If a dangerous place like the Thousand Demons Nest was located in a dynasty, the dynasty would be destroyed in a few days. The destructive power of a monster king was comparable to a nuclear bomb. If there was no false sacred expert to stop it, it could easily destroy an intermediate dynasty. The Thousand Demons Nest was located in a place called the Barren Demon Land in the South Horizon region. The entire Barren Demon Land was extremely large and filled with many monsters. There were no dynasties around the Barren Demon Land, making it seem uninhabited. Other than some hunting groups that would enter the Barren Demon Land to hunt monsters, almost no one would come here. As for the Thousand Demons Nest in the center of the Barren Demon Land, it was a forbidden area. Hunting groups did not dare to go near it. On this day, a hunting group was hunting in the Barren Demon Land. Hey, have you heard the recent news? It is said that there is an ancient treasure in the Thousand Demons Nest, a member of the hunting group said. So what if I've heard of it? A place like the Myriad Demon Nest is a place where even false saint experts won't be able to gain any benefits. Those demon beast kings are not to be trifled with, another person said. At this moment, there was an earth-shattering roar in the distant sky. What's going on? Is there a great danger? The members of the hunting group were shocked. However, when they looked carefully, they found that it was a huge ship crossing the sky. There was a sword-shaped pattern on the surface of the ship. That is the symbol of the Sword Dynasty. A member of the hunting group was shocked. That direction is the Thousand Demons' Nest. Could it be? The members of the hunting group looked at each other in dismay. The Thousand Demons' Nest was an absolute forbidden area in the barren demon land. I'm afraid, this world is going to change. Everyone sighed in their hearts. This scene played out in all directions of the barren demon land. The fleet of the other three dynasties also sailed into the barren demon land. We are finally arriving. On a ship, Yiguchin stood on the deck and looked into the distance. After entering the barren demon land, Yiguchin also felt the aura of many monsters. Further away, in the core of the barren demon land, Yiguchin could also vaguely feel an endless amount of monster chi gathering. That place was definitely a forbidden area. This time, it was fortunate that the four dynasties had chosen to join forces. Otherwise, if any one of the dynasties wanted to enter alone, they might have to pay an extremely great price. Another day passed, and the Sword Dynasty's fleet stopped in midair. What's going on? Some of the geniuses were puzzled. We've arrived at the agreed location, Bei Xian Elder said. The four great dynasties agreed on a location, and they would march together at that time. Otherwise, it would be even more dangerous to enter separately. Not long after, a series of explosions could be heard in the distant sky. One after another, ironclad warships sailed through the void. There were also ferocious ancient war chariots rumbling in the sky. The entire fleet of ships carried a kind of fighting and killing aura, which was very fierce. It's the War God Dynasty. On the Sword Dynasty's side, the hearts of many experts and prodigies trembled. The War God Dynasty was ranked second among the 100 dynasties. In terms of foundation, it was not much weaker than the Sword Dynasty. The leaders of the War God Dynasty were the Heaven War Emperor and the Earth War Emperor, who were known as the Heaven War Emperor. Their strength was outstanding among the false saints, and it was said that they were not far from the Tribulation Saint realm. In addition, there were various marquises, all of whom were false saints. If the proud divine land had not gone missing and the Sword Dao Alliance had not split up, they would have been able to firmly suppress the War God Dynasty. But now, it was a bit uncertain. Obviously, the War God Dynasty also wanted to use the opportunities left behind by the Sacred Dynasty to strengthen their national strength and surpass the Sword Dynasty to take the throne of the First Dynasty. Yiguchin looked around and found that the War God Dynasty had sent 5 false saints this time. Although they were not as strong as the Sword Dynasty, they were not weak. Alliance Leader E, you're really early. A false saint from the War God Dynasty stepped out. Heroic Marshal Marquis, are you leading the team this time? Yi Tianqing glanced at the false saint lightly. Haha, it's a pleasure to work with you this time. These little bastards of the War God Dynasty can't compare to the geniuses of the Sword Dynasty. The heroic Marshal Marquis laughed heartily. On the Sword Dynasty's side, many geniuses looked over. Some geniuses on the War God list were among them. As expected, Yiguchin found Jean Boubi among them. Jean Boubi, ranked 10th on the War God list. He had appeared in the ancient Chaos Wasteland before, and at that time, he had brought some pressure to Yiguchin. But now, as if sensing Yiguchin's gaze, Jean Boubi's expression changed slightly. The various miracles that Yiguchin had created in the Sword Dynasty gradually spread to other dynasties. As the Sword Dynasty's invisible opponent, the War God Dynasty naturally gathered a lot of information. Is that person the natural-born saint, Dugu Wubai? He doesn't look like he has 3 heads and 6 arms. Beside Jean Boubi, a young girl about 13 years old spoke with a crisp voice. The young girl was delicate, with bright eyes and black hair tied into 2 ponytails. She crossed her arms in front of her ordinary-looking chest, revealing 2 small canine teeth as she spoke. Your Highness, Dugu Wubai is a natural-born saint after all. You can't underestimate him, Jean Boubi said respectfully. When he was in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, he was domineering and awe-inspiring. But now, facing this adorable budding lowly, he actually had a bit of respect. He's quite handsome. I wonder how strong he is compared to my royal brother. It's a pity that my royal brother is in seclusion to prepare for the prodigy battle and can't come. The young girl shook her head with a hint of pity. On the other side, Yiguchin also noticed the young girl. Is that young girl the little princess of the war god dynasty, Zhao Xiaodi? Yiguchin muttered to himself. Zhao Xiaodi was ranked 8th on the war god list. This ranking didn't seem very high, but one should know that Zhao Xiaodi was only 13 years old. To be able to rank 8th on the war god list at 13 years old was enough to show her amazing talent and strength. It's said that the little princess of the war god dynasty has a special bloodline and was born with strange strength. I wonder how strong she is, Yiguchin thought to himself. But he wasn't interested in competing with a young girl. Seeing Yiguchin sizing her up, the little princess Zhao Xiaodi pouted her pink lips and waved her small fist at Yiguchin as if she wanted to beat him up. Yiguchin smiled and didn't care. Not long after, another group of ships sailed over from another place, with a gust of piercing saber chi. The Tyrant Saber Dynasty had arrived. This time, the Tyrant Saber Dynasty had sent 4 false saints, which was not a small number. Yiguchin glanced over and saw some geniuses on the saber list. He also saw 2 acquaintances among them. They were the gold and silver sabers, Jin Huan and Yin Gu. Back in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, the gold and silver sabers had taken away one of Yiguchin's map fragments because of Ouyang Fengyun's obstruction. Sensing Yiguchin's gaze, Jin Huan and Yin Gu were a little scared. Although they had both broken through to the divine dwelling stage, and their combined strength had greatly increased. But the name Yiguchin had created really made them afraid. He was a natural saint. Yiguchin was a little disappointed after sweeping his gaze over. He knew about the saber list and knew that Gu Zun was also training in the Tyrant Saber Dynasty and had pushed his way up the saber list. But Yiguchin didn't see any trace of Gu Zun. Gu Zun, if you participate in the Battle of the Heavenly Prides, you will definitely fight again, Yiguchin muttered. Gu Zun was an opponent that Yiguchin recognized. Then, in the distance, endless black chi spread out with a chilling aura. The Mara dynasty had arrived. Chapter 1043. The Maluo dynasty was ranked 3rd among the 100 great dynasties. If the Sword Dynasty was a kingdom of sword cultivators, then the Tyrant Saber Dynasty was a paradise for saber cultivators. Then the Maluo Dynasty was a veritable dynasty of killing and a kingdom of death. In the Maluo Dynasty, there was no morality or law to speak of. All the warriors of the Maluo Dynasty believed that the strong were respected. People with strength, resources, influence, power, and women had everything. People without strength could only wait for the fate of being killed. It was precisely because of this that the experts of the Maluo dynasty were mostly insidious, cunning, indifferent, and bloodthirsty. They were extremely powerful. There were also the Heaven Prides on the blood ranking, each one of them was ruthless and cruel, causing people to tremble in fear. Even the Heaven Prides of the other 3 great dynasties were unwilling to face the Heaven Prides of the Maluo dynasty. The Maluo dynasty had also sent 5 false saint experts this time. In addition, there were also some sovereigns of the Heavenly Palace. Of course, the main force that entered the sacred dynasty's treasure trove was still the Heaven Prides of the divine dwelling stage. Yiguchin narrowed his eyes slightly. In the Maluo dynasty, there were people who hated him. A hateful gaze fell on Yiguchin. Yiguchin looked over indifferently. A bewitching man sitting in a pink palanquin was staring at Yiguchin with extremely resentful eyes. It was the 7th on the blood ranking, the Pink Playboy. In the great tomb of the ancient Chaos Wasteland, Yiguchin had directly cut off one of the Pink Playboy's hands in order to seize the map fragments. At this moment, the Pink Playboy's severed hand had unexpectedly recovered. It was unknown what kind of recovery pill he had taken. But Yiguchin didn't care. In the ancient Chaos Wasteland, Yiguchin wasn't particularly afraid of the Pink Playboy. Now that his strength was different from the past, he didn't need to care about Yiguchin. Seemingly aware of the indifference in Yiguchin's eyes, the Pink Playboy's bewitching face was about to distort. Damn, how can this bastard be so strong? He broke through the 20th floor of the Sword Dynasty's Mount Saint Crossing, became a natural saint, and even swept away Hua Wuxiu and the others in the 5 Academies tournament. Pink Gentleman felt a sense of disbelief when he thought of all the rumors that had been spread by Yiguchen. He was simply unwilling to believe that this Yiguchen was the person who had formed a grudge with him back in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. This kind of improvement speed was too shocking. Even the Pink Gentleman had received a lot of rewards from the Mo Luo dynasty for handing over the incomplete map. They had even given him pills that could heal his palms, which had greatly increased his strength. But now, if Pink Gentleman were to face Yiguchen alone, he still did not have the slightest bit of confidence. Fortunately, I've already made arrangements after receiving the news. Pink Gentleman's eyes flashed with a cold glint. Ever since he received news about Yiguchen, Pink Gentleman had been thinking about how to take revenge. Pink Gentleman, is this Dugu Wubai the one who chopped off your hand? He's no longer a nameless person. A tall and mighty figure landed beside the Pink Gentleman's sedan chair. It was a very sturdy young man. He was wearing animal skin and had oil paint on his face. He looked a little like a barbarian. His pupils were vertical like a beast's and emitted a faint green light. The sturdy young man was called Chao Hu. He came from a sect called the Demonic Beast sect in the Mo Luo dynasty. He was the top genius of this sect and ranked 10th on the blood ranking. Although his ranking was not high, this sect's strongest technique was to tame beasts. If the blood ranking did not include demonic beasts in combat strength, Chao Hu's ranking would not only be 10th. This trip to the 10,000 Demons' Nest was Chao Hu's natural battlefield. Naturally, he would not miss it. Humph, how would I know that he was so capable at that time? But Chao Hu, this time you have promised to help me get rid of this bastard. Pink Gentleman transmitted his voice. Don't worry, I won't break my promise. My little guys will definitely want to eat the flesh of such a natural saint, right? Chao Hu grinned, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth. Pink Gentleman was still worried. He transmitted his voice to another direction. Your Highness, if there is an accident this time, I'll need you to help. In another direction, a cold and beautiful figure stood on the deck. Her skin was snow-white, and her body was graceful. She was almost naked, and only her important parts were covered with black scales. Her smoky gray hair fluttered in the wind. The upper half of her delicate face was covered by a mask, revealing her charming red lips. This cold and beautiful figure carried an extremely dark and bloody aura. She was a woman, but she looked like a Shura from hell. She was the second on the blood ranking of the Mo Luo dynasty, Princess Luo Ho. To be second on the blood ranking meant that Princess Luo Ho's hands were stained with blood. Not to mention the geniuses of the other 3 dynasties, even some of the geniuses of the Mo Luo dynasty looked at Princess Luo Ho with fear. She was a truly cruel and cold-blooded beauty. Hearing Pink Gentleman's words, Princess Luo Ho transmitted her voice indifferently. If the time is right, I won't hesitate to help. Thank you, Your Highness. Pink Gentleman breathed a sigh of relief after receiving Princess Luo Ho's promise. He looked at Yiguchen and said in a cold voice with incomparable hatred, Dugu Wubai, you broke my arm back then. This time, I'll break your life. Yiguchen's consciousness was sharp, and he also felt Pink Gentleman's killing intent. He was not surprised, but he was curious about where Pink Gentleman got the confidence to deal with him. Pink Gentleman must have known about Yiguchen's various news. It's easy to dodge an open attack, but difficult to dodge a hidden arrow. However, if you want to die, then don't blame me. Yiguchen's eyes also became cold. The teams of the 4 dynasties gathered together. The number of false saint experts had reached a total of 24. This was definitely a terrifying number. When this force was gathered together, even an overlord-level force would have to be cautious. However, the monsters in the myriad demon nest were also extremely powerful. Each monster king could fight 2 or even 3 monsters at the same time. Let's go. Next, the joint team of the 4 dynasties headed toward the core of the barren demon land. After half a day, Yiguchen finally saw the nest of 10,000 demons, which was quite famous in the South Horizon region. The myriad demon nest was called a nest, but it was actually an extremely ancient and desolate mountain range. The entire mountain range was oval-shaped like a bird's nest. In addition, there were many ferocious monsters, which was why it was called the myriad demon nest. As everyone knew, there were powerful monster kings in the myriad demon nest. Even false saint experts did not dare to approach the myriad demon nest alone. This was because the monster kings were extremely sensitive to auras. If it was just some heaven and earth spirit bridge experts or human divine dwelling experts, it would be far from enough to alarm the monster kings. However, if a top sovereign or false saint expert came, the monster kings in the depths of the myriad demon nest would immediately sense it. Just like now. Roar. In the southern region of the myriad demon nest, a lion's roar shook the sky. Roar. In the eastern region of the myriad demon nest, a tiger's roar shook the forest for thousands of miles. Then, there was the howl of a wolf. There was the cry of an ape. There was the hissing of a giant python that made one's scalp go numb. Everyone, be on guard. The monster kings are about to appear. Yi Tianqing said with a serious expression. Everyone from the 4 dynasties raised their guard. The monster kings of the myriad demon nest were finally about to appear. Chapter 1044. It was rumored that the 1,000 demon nest had a total of 10 demon kings, and each of them was a ferocious existence. Not to mention the divine dwelling realm prodigies and heavenly palace sovereigns of the 4 dynasties, even some false saints had solemn expressions. Roar. In the distant sky, a fierce lion-shaped demon beast flapped its wings and flew over. It had a pair of wings on its ribs, and its tail was not a lion's tail but a scorpion's tail that looked like it was carved out of white jade. It's the Demon King, the scorpion-tail jade lion. Some sovereigns exclaimed. The scorpion-tail jade lion was an extremely powerful demon king. Its white scorpion tail was comparable to a heavenly tribulation divine weapon. It could easily penetrate all kinds of armor and had fatal poison. However, there were still 24 false saints present. Although everyone was surprised, they did not panic too much. However, following that, more ferocious auras rushed over. A tiger king that looked like it was made of gold appeared. The tiger's roar shook the forest and shook the surroundings. It was the Demon King, the Golden Tiger King. A silver-white wolf king dashed over at high speed. There was a moon-shaped emblem on its forehead that released a powerful aura. Every time it jumped, it could trample a mountain peak. It's the Demon King, the Howling Moon Demon Wolf. Someone exclaimed in a low voice. Buzz, a wasp king appeared. It was as big as a bird, and its wings were as sharp as swords, bursting with endless sword chi. The sword-winged wasp king. Some sovereigns' faces turned pale. Another powerful demon king had appeared. A shadow was cast in the sky. It was a pitch-black python that was 100 feet long. It had 8 wings on its back and hissed. It's the 8-winged fiend python. Everyone was terrified. One after another, the kings of the beasts showed up. The aura of each of them was incomparably terrifying. There were even some demonic beast kings among them. Even false saint experts frowned when they saw them. For example, there was a black dragon with 8 eyes. It was a rather ferocious demonic beast king called the 8-eyed ghost dragon. There was an eagle-type demon beast with green eyes and golden feathers all over its body. As it flapped its wings, wind blades burst out. That was the Demon King, the green-eyed golden eagle. There was also a gigantic ape that was as large as a mountain. Its entire body was covered in pitch-black dragon scales, and there was a fleshy lump on its forehead, as if something was about to grow out of it. This giant ape was called the Dark Dragon Ape. There was even a trace of the dragon tribe's bloodline in its body. Although it was very faint, it was still extremely powerful. In just a few moments, the 10 kings of the demonic beasts of the myriad demons nest had all arrived. The terrifying demonic aura turned into a tremendous wave that swept across the place. Human, what are you trying to do? The dark draconic ape asked in a low, muffled voice. The king of demonic beasts could already speak the human language, and its intelligence was not inferior to that of humans. Looking at the 10 demonic beast kings, even some of the false saints looked solemn. The kings of the monsters in the myriad demons' nest usually occupied their own territories. There were many disputes, and some were even like fire and water. However, in the face of human beings or other alien races, these kings of demon beasts would temporarily put aside their internal conflicts and unite against the common enemy. It was also because of this that the myriad demons' nest was so infamous that even false saints did not dare to casually step into it. "We found a human relic in the myriad demons' nest, and we need to enter it," Heavenly Sentiment said faintly. "Do you think it's possible? If we kings of demonic beasts want to enter your dynasty's imperial capital, would you be willing to?" The dark draconic ape asked in a low voice. Its voice was like the beating of a heavenly drum. "Moreover, you humans have always been treacherous. With such a lineup, I'm afraid you have long planned this." The green-eyed golden eagle flapped its wings in the air and spoke the human language. "Alliance leader, why waste your time talking to these beasts? Anyway, these beasts will not give in. Let's just kill our way in." Hua Yuntao suddenly said loudly, his eyes flashing secretly. "This." Heavenly Sentiment frowned slightly. However, these words completely ignited the anger of the kings of demonic beasts. "Human scum, you're courting death." The dark draconic ape roared angrily. Its fist seemed to break the sky as it blasted toward the Sword Dynasty. The rest of the kings of demonic beasts, such as the scorpion-tailed jade lion, sword-winged bee king, moon-howling demonic wolf, eight-eyed ghost dragon, golden tiger king, eight-winged demonic python, and other kings of demonic beasts also roared and charged toward the 4 great dynasties. "Everyone, for the sake of the sacred dynasty's treasure, let's go." The war god dynasty's heroic martial marquis also made his move. If they wanted to explore the sacred dynasty's treasure in the myriad demons' nest, they had to delay these kings of demonic beasts. Rumble. The battle between the kings of demonic beasts and the human false saints had completely begun. In fact, the 4 great dynasties also knew that these kings of demonic beasts would definitely not let them explore the myriad demons' nest. Therefore, they had long been prepared for battle. At this moment, 24 false saints made their move, and their power shook the heavens and the earth. The entire myriad demons' nest mountain range seemed to be trembling. Countless demonic beasts were awakened, and they felt as if doomsday was coming. "You human scum, you will pay the price in blood." The moon-howling demonic wolf roared. Although there were only 10 kings of demonic beasts, their numbers were far less than the 24 false saints of the human race. However, each king of demonic beasts could fight 2 or even 3 false saints at the same time. Even if 2 or 3 false saints of the same level worked together, they might not be able to kill a king of demonic beasts. Rumble. The terrifying shockwaves of the battle were like huge waves, sweeping in all directions. The other prodigies and supremacies of the 4 great dynasties all jumped down from the ship. "Take the opportunity to enter," a false saint shouted. Immediately, the prodigies and supremacies of the 4 great dynasties all swarmed into the myriad demons' nest. "Humans, you will not succeed." The dark dragon ape roared, and its voice was like thunder. It threw out a punch, and directly sent a false saint flying, causing him to cough up blood. The dark dragon ape was one of the strongest kings of demonic beasts, even among the 10 kings of demonic beasts. Taking advantage of the opportunity when the false saints were delaying the 10 kings of demonic beasts, the prodigies of the 4 great dynasties also broke into the myriad demons' nest under the lead of many supremacies. On the side of Sacred Cliff College, first Elder Ime, who was a 9th heaven supremacy, was leading, followed by a few temple masters and elders, and then Yiguchin and the other Sacred Cliff College disciples. The other colleges and the people of the 4 great dynasties also went in. However, not long after they entered, Yiguchin's sharp divine consciousness sensed many powerful demonic chi rising in the distance. "It's not that simple," Yiguchin thought to himself. If they could delay the 10 kings of demonic beasts, they could easily enter the myriad demons' nest. Then there would be no need for prodigies like them, and they could just send supremacies. Roar! Powerful demonic beasts appeared one after another. Although the aura of these demonic beasts had not reached the level of the kings of demonic beasts, it was not too far away. Rank 7 demonic beasts. First Elder Ime frowned. Rank 7 demonic beasts were comparable to human supremacies. In addition, demonic beasts were born with advantages in terms of body size, physical strength, and other aspects. Therefore, facing a rank 7 demonic beast, even supremacies of the Celestial Palace would not have much of an advantage. Now, the rank 7 demonic beasts in the Myriad Demon's Nest had received orders from the 10 kings of demonic beasts to attack the dynasty's experts who had broken into the Myriad Demon's Nest. The only ones who could stop these rank 7 demonic beasts were the supremacies of the Celestial Palace. My friend Dugu, we supremacies will go and stop the rank 7 demonic beasts later. Then, we'll leave the search for the Sacred Dynasty's treasure to you guys. Remember, you have to make sure you can survive first. First Elder Ime said earnestly. For a prodigy like Yiguchin, the first thing to do was to stay alive, and the second was to fight for the opportunity. Understood. Yiguchin nodded slightly. He knew that it was probably time for the prodigies of the 4 dynasties to show their skills. Chapter 1045. There were many Celestial Palace supremacies from the 4 dynasties. However, there were also many rank 7 beasts in the Thousand Demons' Nest. Soon, the menacing rank 7 beasts clashed with the Celestial Palace supremacies from the 4 dynasties. Senior Dugu, what should we do now? Some Sacred Cliff College disciples asked. Yiguchin had become the backbone of everyone in Sacred Cliff College. Avoid these rank 7 beasts and go deep into the Thousand Demons' Nest as soon as possible to find the entrance to the Sacred Dynasty's treasure, Yiguchin said. Before coming to the Thousand Demons' Nest, the 4 dynasties had already combined the 4 map fragments into one map. The map indicated that the location of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure was in the Thousand Demons' Nest. However, the exact location was very vague. The entire Thousand Demons' Nest was extremely vast. It would not be easy to find the entrance to the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Okay, we'll listen to Senior Dugu, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples said. Xuanlian, Ling Moyin, Ling Emoshu, Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and the others also followed Yiguchin. The entire Sacred Cliff College's prodigies huddled together. Yiguchin's figure flashed as he went deep into the Thousand Demons' Nest with a group of Sacred Cliff College prodigies. The supremacies from the 4 dynasties were holding back the rank 7 beasts. Therefore, the remaining prodigies all rushed into the Thousand Demons' Nest at an extremely fast speed. The range is too big, Yiguchin muttered. In the Thousand Demons' Nest, ancient trees towered into the sky and covered the sky. The environment was extremely dark. Yiguchin's mind moved, and his chaotic mind sea rolled as his chaotic soul power spread out. Yiguchin, who had once possessed the chaotic mind sea, had a divine soul perception range of 10,000 feet, far exceeding that of other prodigies of the same level. With the help of his soul perception, Yiguchin led the Sacred Cliff College team to avoid many places with dense demonic energy. That being said, the other 4 academies, the 13 swordsmen, and the geniuses of the remaining 3 dynasties did not waste their time either. They all executed their moves and ventured deeper. At this stage, no sky prides had started killing each other because it was not the right time yet. However, one could imagine that once they found the Sacred Dynasty's treasures, the geniuses of the 4 dynasties would definitely engage in the most brutal battles in the face of the numerous opportunities. Something's not right. Yiguchin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Sacred Cliff College's team also stopped. Everyone's expression changed as they felt the ground shaking. The rest of the geniuses were stunned too. Could it be that the king of the demonic beasts has broken free from its entanglement? Some of the geniuses' faces turned pale. Rumble, right at this moment, the mountain range in the distance rumbled, and the earth trembled. Large amounts of ancient trees collapsed, and dust filled the sky. Oh no, it's a beast tide. Yiguchin's eyes flashed, and his heart skipped a beat. His soul perception range was the largest, and it was also very sensitive. He immediately sensed that the earth-shattering rumble was a beast tide. If one were to name the most terrifying existences in the nest of 1,000 demons, one would be the 10 kings of the demonic beasts, and the other would be the destructive beast tide. There had been more than one beast tide in the nest of 1,000 demons. Among them, the largest beast tide could even easily destroy a dynasty. Of course, although the scale of the beast tide was not considered large, compared to the number of the geniuses of the 4 dynasties, it was already a crushing presence. Damn it, the beast tide is here. Everyone, be careful. The geniuses of the 4 dynasties had a drastic change in their expressions. They saw the beast tide in the distance. Lions, tigers, wolves, horses, apes, monkeys, birds, worms, pythons, and all sorts of other types of demonic beasts gathered together and formed a destructive torrent that pushed forward. Although none of these beasts were particularly powerful, a great number of ants could kill an elephant. Even a supremacy would be terrified if he saw this beast tide. It was obvious that this beast tide was an order from the kings of the demonic beasts. Although the 10 kings of the demonic beasts could not gather a beast tide that could destroy a dynasty in a short period of time. However, such a scale was more than enough to deal with this group of geniuses. You guys have to be careful. If you can't handle it, just run. Yiguchin said. Although this beast tide was terrifying, Yiguchin's imminent skyline movement technique was not too big of a problem for him to escape. However, the same could not be said for the other Sacred Cliff College disciples. Yiguchin was not the only one who thought so. Although the geniuses of the other 4 academies and the 3 dynasties were a little nervous, none of them retreated directly. After all, the Sacred Dynasty's treasure was too attractive. If they could obtain some opportunities, they would soar to the sky. Not to mention that there might be fruit of the sacred path among them. Rumble. The beast tide trampled on the ground, and cracks spread out. The geniuses of the 4 dynasties performed their moves together, forming a colorful torrent of moves that swept toward the beast tide. Boom! 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 A large group of demonic beasts at the front exploded into clouds of blood mist. After all, there were no 7th-level demonic beasts among them. However, more demonic beasts charged toward the group of geniuses. In the end, the beast tide and the geniuses of the 4 dynasties collided fiercely. Kill! Yiguchin did not hold back. He held the 9-dragon thunder prison and swung his sword. The 9-colored thunder turned into lightning arcs and spread out, sweeping through the group of demonic beasts in front of him. Is that the natural saint of the Sword Dynasty, Dugawubai? Some of the geniuses of the other dynasties saw the power of Yiguchin's sword from the corner of their eyes, and their eyelids twitched. Especially those from the other 3 dynasties. They had only heard about Yiguchin and had not seen it with their own eyes. Looks like it's not bad. The little princess of the War God Empire, Zhao Xiaodi, also widened her watery eyes in surprise. She had thought that the news of the natural saint was just a rumor. Now, it seemed that it was not fake. On the other side, Pink Playboy's face was also a little ugly. The more powerful Yiguchin was, the lower his chances of revenge would be. Humph. Jiankui snorted coldly, his dark golden hair fluttering. He raised the bronze pagoda with his left hand. In an instant, flying needle-like weapons flew out of the pagoda. In the end, they expanded in the wind and turned into flying swords. A total of 81 flying swords flew out of the bronze pagoda. Every 9 flying swords formed a lotus-shaped sword formation. The 81 flying swords formed a 9-colored lotus sword formation and flew toward the beast tide. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Severed limbs flew everywhere, and a large empty space appeared in front of them. Is that Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty? He can use such a powerful sword formation casually. Jiankui's method shocked the geniuses of the other 3 dynasties once again. Everyone could see that the sword chief had only casually used a move, yet it possessed such power. It was truly shocking. Yiguchin frowned slightly. The person who could take Jinkuei's position was indeed something. Then, the geniuses of the other dynasties showed their abilities. Hua Wuxiu controlled the light and shadow swords and swept the area with sword qi. Jian Jingheng used the ultimate technique that he had learned in the ancient sword tomb. It was flawless, and many beasts were directly cut into pieces. The little princess of the war god dynasty, Zhao Xiaodi, took out a golden hammer that did not match her petite figure. With one swing, she smashed a group of beasts. It was so violent that it made people's eyes twitch. In addition, Princess Luo Ho of the Maluo dynasty held the death scythe and left blood everywhere she went. On the Tyrant Sword dynasty's side, a young man with a wild temperament held a tiger-headed sword. His sword qi was so powerful that it cut through everything. His name was Imo Guangdao, and he was a powerful genius who ranked 6th on the sword roll of the Tyrant Sword dynasty. It could be said that some of the truly powerful geniuses had shown their abilities in the beast tide. Of course, there were also many geniuses who died in the mouths of the beasts. After all, a large number of ants could kill an elephant. The sheer number of beasts could drown this group of geniuses. Chapter 1046. Fighting, shouting, and the roars of the beasts echoed throughout the thousand-demon nest. In the sky, the false saints and supremacies of the 4 dynasties were fighting with the kings of the beasts and many rank 7 beasts. On the ground, the terrifying beast horde was fighting with the prodigies of the 4 dynasties. Absolute Sword of Qianyang. The sword in Yi Guqin's hand vibrated, and a blazing sword aura pierced through a group of rank 5 beasts, causing blood to splatter everywhere. However, even more demonic beasts surrounded and attacked them. There were also casualties among the disciples of Sacred Cliff College. We can't go on like this. Yi Guqin frowned. Just as he was about to think of a way, the sword chieftain, who was standing not far away, suddenly said, "Everyone, we can't go on like this. Although the 4 great dynasties are in a competitive relationship, we still have to find the sacred dynasty's treasure before fighting, right?" Jinkuei's words made the surrounding prodigies' expressions flicker. No matter what the sword dynasty's current situation was, at least it was still the first dynasty. And Jinkuei was the leader of the 13 swordsmen. His casual attack just now had shocked everyone. Therefore, Jinkuei's words were quite influential. "I suggest that we band together like a rope and break through the beast horde like a sharp knife and directly enter the depths of the thousand-demon nest," Jinkuei said. "I agree," Hua Wuxiu said. "That's a good idea." Zhao Xiaodi and the other prodigies of the war god dynasty nodded. "Okay," Princess Luo Ho said coldly after thinking for a while. At this stage, it wouldn't be good for any dynasty if they didn't unite. They might even make a wasted trip. "Okay, then we'll band together. Since I'm the one who suggested it, I'll take the lead." Jian Kuei let out a cold shout as his mind moved. The 9 Lotus Sword Array had a total of 81 flying swords. They hovered in the void and rushed forward like a meat grinder, plowing a path of blood and flesh wherever they passed. Jinkuei held the pagoda in his left hand and put his right hand behind his back. He strolled leisurely like a fiend god. So strong, the sky prides of the Battle God Dynasty, Mo Luo Dynasty, and domineering Saber Dynasty felt their eyelids twitch. The strength of the Sword Dynasty's Jinkuei far exceeded their expectations. Even on the Sword Dynasty's side, Kenpo and the other independent sword sons didn't look too good under their masks. The stronger the Jinkuei was, the slimmer their chances of winning the position of Jinkuei. With a super prodigy like Jinkuei leading the way, the prodigies from the other 3 dynasties were also relieved. At the very least, Jinkuei himself did not seem like he was trying to trick them. After that, the prodigies of the various dynasties gathered and followed closely behind Jinkuei, tearing a path through the dense beast horde. "What should we do?" Ling Emoshu asked with a frown. These prodigies from the itinerant cultivator camp were actually unwilling to listen to Jinkuei. "Let's follow him." "He's right," Yi Guqin said calmly. Although he and Jinkuei were enemies, there was nothing wrong with what Jinkuei was doing. After a while, the disciples of Sacred Cliff College also gathered together. With Yiguchen leading the way, they prepared to break through the beast horde's encirclement through the opening. However, not long after Yiguchen moved forward, he suddenly noticed two people from the Moro dynasty in front of him. One of them was a familiar face. It was Pink Playboy. The other was a burly young man dressed in animal skin. His eyes were glowing with a green light like that of a wild beast. That's Chao Hu, ranked 10th on the blood ranking of the Moro dynasty, Yiguchen murmured. At this moment, Pink Playboy's lips curled into a vicious smile. Chao Hu, you can attack now. Okay, let's kill this Duga Wubai directly. Chao Hu grinned, revealing his beast-like fangs. He suddenly waved his hand, and dozens of blood-red bullets shot toward Yiguchen and Sacred Cliff College like thunderbolts. Be careful. Yiguchen, with his sharp senses, shouted in a low voice. He could dodge directly, but the disciples of Sacred Cliff College were behind him. Yiguchen could not dodge. He swept his 9-dragon thunder prison, and a sword light flashed. Boom! 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 Those blood-red bullets exploded one by one. They were not very powerful. However, they exploded into clouds of blood-red powder with a strong smell of blood. Oh no! Yiguchen immediately sensed Chao Hu's intention. The blood-red powder almost contaminated all the surrounding disciples of Sacred Cliff College. Yiguchen was standing at the front, and he was the first to be affected the most. On the other side, Ling Moying gritted her teeth and said, Chao Hu comes from a force called the Demonic Beast sect in the Maluo dynasty. That force is best at taming beasts. Her body was also contaminated with some of the powder. Just as the blood-red powder was released, the eyes of the surrounding beasts turned red. They roared and charged toward the Sacred Cliff College team. They were like jackals and wolves that had smelled blood. The degree of madness was unprecedented. Ha, this is the Demonic Beast Sect's special beast-attracting powder. Duga Wubai, enjoy it. Chao Hu grinned. Pink Playboy had paid a price to make him attack. Chao Hu was also very happy. This kind of situation was his home ground. Duga Wubai, in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, you cut off one of my arms. Today, I will bury the entire Sacred Cliff College with you. Pink Playboy revealed a morbid smile. It was as if his whole body was carefree and all the grievances in his heart had been released. You are all courting death. Yiguchen's face was unprecedentedly cold. If Pink Playboy had only attacked him, Yiguchen wouldn't have been so angry. But now, the entire Divine Cliff Academy's team had been implicated. Pink Playboy, Chao Hu, if the two of you can walk out of the myriad demon nest alive, Duga Wubai will never lift a sword again. Yiguchen shouted coldly. It was as if a divine king was enraged. To make a sword cultivator swear not to lift a sword, how determined must he be? Pink Playboy's face changed slightly when he heard Yiguchen's words, which were full of determination and killing intent. Yiguchen's current status and strength were different from when he was in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. His words carried a lot of weight. However, Chao Hu didn't think so. He sneered and said, You are about to die, yet you still dare to speak so arrogantly. Let's go. They can't get rid of this beast tide. The Demonic Beast Sect's beast-attracting powder was specially made. Once it was contaminated, it would be very difficult to get rid of immediately. It would take at least 2 hours for it to slowly dissipate. Under the current situation where the beast tide was wreaking havoc and ferocious beasts were everywhere, would Yiguchen be able to hold on for 2 hours? Chao Hu definitely wouldn't believe it. After sneering at Yiguchen and the others, Pink Playboy, Chao Hu, and the others rushed toward the torn opening. Yiguchen wanted to help, but he was surrounded by the endless beast tide. That kid is unlucky. Is a natural saint really going to die halfway? Seeing Yiguchen's situation, Zhao Xiaodi pouted and shook her head. However, she didn't have any relationship with Yiguchen. Naturally, she wouldn't risk her life to save him. It seems like I don't have to do anything. You are already dead. Jiankui, who was at the front, was the first to break through the beast tide. He glanced at Yiguchin and calmly retracted his gaze. It was as if he already regarded Yiguchin as a dead man. What a pity. Hua Wuxiu sighed. He still wanted to end Yiguchin with his own hands. He never thought that his opponent would be killed by the beast tide. Chapter 1047. Right now, Sacred Cliff College's team was in a critical situation. Due to the beast-attracting powder, they had attracted the attention of most of the beasts. The pressure on the other dynasty prodigies had decreased, and they charged through the beast horde at an extremely fast speed. Shameless. Some Sacred Cliff College disciples' eyes were red. They had become the target of the beast's attacks, while the other dynasty prodigies had safely passed through. To a certain extent, they had gained a huge advantage. Brother Dugu, let us help you. Kenpo said and was about to turn around to help. Brother Kenpo, don't come over. I can handle this. Yiguchin said loudly. He had already implicated Sacred Cliff College's team, and he was unwilling to drag anyone else into it. Kenpo, Dugu Wubai is right. We have to look at the big picture. Jiankui's position is the most important, Jian Shi said solemnly. Sigh, Brother Dugu, you have to be careful. Kenpo sighed deeply. One reason he left was because he had the heavy responsibility of stopping the Sword Chieftain. On the other hand, he believed that Yiguchin should be able to escape with his abilities. Dugu Wubai, I believe you won't die so easily, Jian Jinghong muttered to himself. As a disciple of heavenly love, he was the main force against Jiankui, so he couldn't delay here and couldn't help. In the end, apart from those prodigies who had already died to the beasts, most of the remaining prodigies had broken through the beast horde. Only Yiguchin and Sacred Cliff College's team were still surrounded by countless beasts because of the beast-attracting powder. Oh no, we can't hold on any longer. Some Sacred Cliff College disciples roared. There were already many casualties in the entire team. They were surrounded by countless beasts, making it difficult for them to even escape. We can't go on like this. If we stick together, we'll be too big of a target. All the demonic beasts will surround us. From now on, listen to me. When I make my move, you guys scatter and scatter. Remember. Yiguchin said firmly. The surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples all nodded. Qianyang Absolute Sword. Kuan-Yu Absolute Sword. The two swords merged, exterminating the universe. Yiguchin unleashed two sword strikes in quick succession. In the end, they merged into a single sword strike that could destroy the heavens and earth. Rumble. Smoke and dust rose in all directions, and a huge crack that was hundreds of feet long spread out on the ground. Broken demonic beast limbs flew everywhere. This sword directly cleared out a large area of demonic beasts. Hurry up and leave. Yiguchin shouted. What about you, senior brother Dugu? At this moment, the Sacred Cliff College disciples finally reacted. If they were to scatter and leave, then Yiguchin would undoubtedly become the demon beast's biggest target. Because he was at the front, he was contaminated with the most beast-attracting powder. Don't worry about me. You guys go, Yiguchin said. No, Master, Xingzhu wants to stay with you. Mu Xingzhu shouted, her starry eyes firm. If they all left, Yiguchin would definitely be in great danger. Ling Moyin, Han Lingxian, and the others also had firm eyes. Enough, don't give me any trouble. Yiguchin frowned and shouted. As he spoke, he swung his sword, causing a rain of blood to splatter. All right, little Yin, let's leave quickly. Believe in Brother Dugu. Ling Emoshu said. It was Yiguchin who saved him from the abyss, so Ling Emoshu also believed in Yiguchin's ability. He would not admit defeat so easily. In the end, Mu Xingzhu and the others could only bite their lips and turn around to leave. As the people scattered, so did the targets. Some of the monsters roared and chased after the Sacred Cliff College disciples. Most of them continued to besiege Yiguchin. This was because the smell of beast-attracting powder on Yiguchin's body was the strongest. Yiguchen's black hair fluttered. With the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand, it was accompanied by a dragon-like roar, "Come!" A thunder dragon soul emerged from the sword. After many transformations, the thunder dragon soul in the 9-dragon thunder prison had also transformed into a real thunder dragon soul. Its power was naturally a level higher than before. Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Yiguchen once again activated the 9-colored profound thunder to support the power of the thunder dragon soul. In an instant, the surrounding thunder exploded, as if it had turned into a thunder purgatory. All the monsters that stepped into it were killed by the thunder. Gradually, the corpses of the monsters around Yiguchen were piled up into a small hill. However, the demonic beasts were still coming in an endless stream. "No, I have to break through the monster tide as soon as possible. Otherwise, even the ultimate sea of Qi won't be enough." Yiguchen made up his mind. But at this moment, a sharp cry was heard. It was a monster with the body of a lion and the head of an eagle. It flapped its iron-gray wings and charged at Yiguchen. "Iron Griffin." Yiguchen's voice was serious. The Iron Griffin was a rank 6 monster, comparable to a human divine dwelling expert. In addition, monsters of the same level were stronger than humans. The strength of the Iron Griffin was estimated to reach the 6th layer of the divine dwelling realm. On the other side, a huge purple bat flapped its wings and came over. It was another rank 6 monster, the Dark Spirit Demonic Bat. Then, a single-horned blood python appeared. "Retreat!" Yiguchen used the so close, yet worlds-apart movement technique and sword moves to contend with the monster tide. Not only that, Yiguchen also had to resist the siege of 3 rank 6 monsters. Soon, Yiguchen coughed up blood from the corner of his mouth. Heartbreaker, Earth Moon, Extreme Sun, 3 absolutes in 1, Moon Falling Star Sinking Vast Sun Break. Yiguchen used the 3 absolutes of the Holy Sword. For a moment, sword chi rumbled as if the sun and moon were in the sky. The terrifying power directly overturned the ground. Gravel and blood splattered in all directions, clearing a part of the monster tide. The single-horned blood python also hissed. Its body was almost cut in half by the sword, dripping with blood. The Iron Griffin swooped down again. The Dark Spirit Demonic Bat emitted a purple soul shockwave. Yiguchen was hit again and retreated as he fought. In the end, he fell into a cliff valley and couldn't escape. Looking at the endless monster tide in front of him and the rank 6 monsters, Yiguchen was shocked. In the distance, other rank 6 monsters were rushing over. Even Yiguchen couldn't help but ask himself, "Am I going to die? No, I haven't saved Su Jianshi, I haven't seen Hong Xue, and I haven't killed Dihaotian. How can I die?" Yiguchen's spirit soared into the sky as he activated his Sea of Qi and used his trump card. Myriad God Tribulation, Life Fall. Yiguchen used his ultimate move. It was as if the god of destruction had descended to the world. The terrifying sword light seemed to transform into a sad song. Blood flowed and splattered on the ground. After Yiguchen's strength increased, the power of the Myriad God Tribulation sword art also increased. Once again, a large group of monster tide was cleared. However, the smell of blood stimulated the remaining demonic beasts even more. They charged at Yiguchen one by one as if they were not afraid of death. The beast-attracting powder's effect is far from over. Yiguchen was about to use his ultimate move again. However, at this moment, the faint roar of a monster could be heard in the distance. Hearing this voice, the demonic beasts with blood-red eyes all stopped in their tracks. No matter what race they were, they all lowered their heads as if they were welcoming their king. Yiguchen was surprised and looked over. "That's..." Chapter 1048. Yiguchen's face was filled with surprise at first, then it turned into joy. 2 small dots appeared in the distance and then flew over. It was a fluffy little red bird, flapping its small wings and flying over. In its claws was a little black monkey with a 5-colored mark between its eyebrows. Who else could these 2 little guys be if not the divine condor and Blackie? Squeak, squeak, squeak. Seeing Yi Gu Chen, Blackie immediately jumped onto Yi Gu Chen's body in a flash and kept squeaking. Those round, pitch-black eyes were filled with joy and excitement. Blackie was sealed by the god of ancient paths, so its cultivation and memory were sealed. Therefore, Blackie now regarded Yi Gu Chen as its closest kin. It was naturally overjoyed to see Yi Gu Chen again. Quack, boy Yi, long time no see. I didn't expect to see you here. The divine condor also squeaked and flapped its wings, landing on Yi Gu Chen's shoulder. I was wondering if I could find you in the nest of demons. I didn't expect you to really be here. Yi Gu Chen also smiled. The divine condor had been with him for a long time. Although Blackie was a chaotic world demonic ape, it had been a great help to him at a critical moment. Therefore, the divine condor and Blackie were not Yi Gu Chen's pets, but more like friends. Divine condor, it's good to see you again. Su Qingyu's figure came out of Yi Gu Chen's body. Former master, it's all thanks to you. If it weren't for you, Master Condor and Boy Yi would have been dead. The divine condor was also very grateful to Su Qingyu. How did you come to the nest of demons? Yi Gu Chen asked. At that time, we were separated in the space tunnel. Master Condor and the silly monkey didn't know where we were. We were afraid of being caught by some human warriors, so we could only run to the nest of demons. The divine condor said. They must have been living in fear at that time. Yi Gu Chen looked around and said, but from the looks of it, you guys must be living quite comfortably in the myriad demon's nest. With the arrival of the divine condor and Blackie, the frenzied demonic beasts all lowered their heads as if they were in awe of the divine condor and Blackie. Even when facing Yi Gu Chen, who had been stained with beast-attracting powder, these demon beasts did not dare to take even half a step closer. Even the rank 6 demonic beasts such as the iron-feathered griffin and the dark spirit demonic bat were the same. Brother Condor, you guys seem to have quite a high status in the Thousand Demons' Nest. Yi Gu Chen asked curiously. Hearing Yi Gu Chen's words, the divine eagle cleared his throat and said with a smug expression, do you know about the green-eyed golden eagle? Of course I do. It's a powerful monster king, Yi Gu Chen said. As they approached the myriad demon's nest, the 10 great demonic beast kings appeared, including the blue-eyed golden eagle. But what did this have to do with the divine condor? Green-eyed golden eagle, my wife. The divine eagle coughed and laughed wildly. Ahem. What did you say? Even with Yi Gu Chen's personality, he was a little surprised and choked. The blue-eyed golden eagle, the powerful monster king in the Thousand Demons' Nest, was the divine eagle's wife? It was not that Yi Gu Chen did not believe it, but the difference in size. Little Yi, what's with that look? Do you think I'm small? No, I'm very big. Seeing Yi Gu Chen's look, the divine eagle immediately straightened his feathers. Then, with a boom, flames burst out. In the end, he turned into a majestic divine eagle with a wingspan of 6 feet. There were some golden patterns on the fiery red feathers, and flames were rising. It looked very gorgeous. Its aura had also reached the level of a rank 6 demonic beast. It was equivalent to the divine dwelling stage of humans. It had to be said that the divine eagle's appearance was not bad at all. With my handsome looks, isn't it easy to take down Xiaobai? The divine eagle said smugly. No wonder. Yi Gu Chen was relieved. What kind of existence was the blue-eyed golden eagle? It was the king of all demonic beasts. Since the divine eagle had a relationship with the blue-eyed golden eagle, he could do whatever he wanted in the Thousand Demons' Nest. It was natural that these demonic beasts respected and obeyed him. Not only me, but the dark dragon ape also seems to respect this silly monkey. It's said that the silly monkey has some ancestral bloodline, so no one dares to bully us in the Thousand Demons' Nest. As the divine eagle spoke, the flames on his body rose, and he turned back into the little red bird again. Yi Gu Chen was enlightened. Blackie's original form was one of the 100 races in the universe. It was an ancient chaotic demon ape, which was indeed the ancestor of ape demonic beasts. What are you all doing here? Get the hell out of here! The divine condor shouted arrogantly. The surrounding demonic beasts scattered like birds. Yiguchen's crisis was solved. There was a cold light in his eyes. "Brother Eagle, please help me solve the crisis of some Sacred Cliff College disciples," Yiguchen said. "No problem. Leave it to me." The divine eagle patted his chest and said, "Okay." Yiguchen nodded slightly with coldness in his eyes. Pink Playboy and Chow who had completely aroused Yiguchen's killing intent. Then, the divine eagle went to help the Sacred Cliff College disciples. Yiguchen took Blackie and went deep into the Thousand Demons' nest. Although Yiguchen had the beast-attracting powder, no demonic beasts dared to attack Yiguchen because of Blackie. On the other hand, after breaking through the demonic beast tide, the heavenly talents immediately scattered and looked for the entrance of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Chow Hu also separated from Pink Playboy. Because Chow Hu was from the demonic beast sect, he was a beast tamer. Therefore, he was like a fish in water in the Thousand Demons' nest. There was a liger, a firecloud fox, and a thunderbolt leopard around him. These 3 demonic beasts were raised by Chow Hu, and they had all reached rank 6. The reason why Chow Hu was only ranked 10th on the blood list was that demonic beasts were not included in his strength. Otherwise, Chow Hu would not be ranked 10th. That Dugu Wubai must have become a meal in the belly of the demonic beasts. Chow Hu grinned. Chow Hu felt a sense of exhilaration when he thought about how such a natural saint had fallen in his hands. It was the pleasure of killing a heavenly talent with his own hands. "Oh, I'm sorry to disappoint you." Just as Chow Hu was talking to himself, a cold voice with extreme killing intent sounded. "Who is it?" Chow Hu's face changed. He felt that the voice was familiar. In the dense forest, Yiguchen was holding the 9-dragon thunder prison. His black robe was soaked in the blood of demonic beasts. His expression was very cold. "You. Dugu Wubai, how is it possible?" Chow Hu saw the person and his breathing seemed to stop. His eyes were filled with unprecedented astonishment. "How is it impossible? I said that if you and the pink gentleman can walk out of the Thousand Demons' nest alive, Dugu Wubai will never lift a sword again." Yiguchen's eyes were filled with killing intent. "Impossible. Are you a human or a ghost? You have beast-attracting powder on you. How can you still be alive when surrounded by the beast tide?" Chow Hu was shocked and puzzled. "You don't have to worry about how I survived. You only need to know how you will die." Yiguchen's tone was cold and indifferent. After the initial shock, Chow Hu calmed himself down. After all, he was born in the Maluo dynasty and had a cruel personality. He immediately came to his senses. Although I don't know how you escaped, not only did you not run, you even came to find me. Since that is the case, I will let you become the food of my demonic beasts." Chow Hu grinned, revealing a mouthful of white sharp teeth. He had only heard some rumors about Yiguchen, but had never seen Yiguchen's methods with his own eyes. Therefore, he was full of confidence. In addition, he also had 3 divine dwelling stage level 6 demonic beasts. Chow Hu was confident that he could kill Yiguchen. Ignorant. Yiguchen did not say anything else and directly drew his sword. Chapter 1049. Yiguchen was filled with murderous intent towards Chow Hu. Hence, he did not hold back at all and used all his strength. Divine Sword Lightning Controlling Technique, Myriad Thunder Transformation. Dazzling 9-colored profound lightning shot out from the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. It turned into dense lightning that poured down on Chow Hu and the 3 demonic beasts. The 3 rank 6 demonic beasts, the liger beast, the firecloud fox, and the blazing thunder leopard, all had powerful auras as they pounced on Yiguchen. However, at this moment, Blackie, who was beside Yiguchen, let out a squeak. Vaguely, there was a wave of pressure that spread out. It was the pressure that belonged to the chaotic world demon ape. Although Blackie's body was sealed by the ancient Tao God seal, the chaotic world demon ape's bloodline pressure still existed. The 3 demonic beasts immediately withered and their auras weakened. Rumble. Lightning splashed and spread in all directions. The three demonic beasts were actually pushed back a little. What's going on? Chao Hu looked as if he had seen a ghost. The three rank 6 demonic beasts that he had raised were usually ferocious, but now, they were like dispirited sick cats. Third ultimate holy sword, star sun flowing fire. Yi Guqin's sword vibrated again. The mighty sword light seemed to turn into a blazing torrent that swept out again. The three demonic beasts were once again pushed back by the attack. Damn it! Seeing this, Chao Hu's eyes turned scarlet. For a beast tamer, the most powerful means were the demonic beasts. If the three demonic beasts were killed, Chao Hu's strength would drop by at least 70 to 80%. Demonic Frenzy Pill. Chao Hu flicked his finger and 3 pills flew out and landed in the mouths of the 3 demonic beasts. In an instant, the eyes of the 3 demonic beasts turned scarlet and their bodies swelled like balloons. They emitted a violent aura and even ignored Blackie's pressure. You do have some skills, Yi Guqin murmured when he saw this. A beast tamer still had some tricks up his sleeve. However, it still could not stop Yi Guqin's killing intent. Third ultimate holy sword, universal annihilation. Yi Guqin unleashed 2 swords in succession before fusing them into the universal extermination. Sword chi shot out, slashing towards the 3 demonic beasts. Use the demonic beast divine ability. Chao Hu formed hand seals to control the 3 demonic beasts. Some powerful demonic beasts with bloodlines had demonic beast superpowers. The lion-tiger beast let out an angry roar, emitting a vibrating sound wave. The fire-cloud fox had flames flowing around its body, turning into flames that swept across the area. The blazebolt leopard opened its mouth and spat out a bolt of lightning. Boom! The sword light collided with the demonic beast's divine ability, causing an astonishing shockwave to erupt. Crushed stones flew everywhere. He should be dead, Chao Hu thought to himself. However, as the dust settled, Yi Guqin's figure appeared. On the surface of his body, the ancient god's immovable king armor appeared, and his entire person transformed into an ancient god. Facing 3 rank 6 monster beasts was still a lot of pressure. Hence, Yi Guqin directly took out his powerful ancient god form, wanting to end the battle quickly. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique, Extreme Fire. Yi Guqin raised the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison with one hand, and the sword light shot out, seemingly forming a crimson-red hexagram in the void. That hexagram was the Li hexagram of the 8 trigrams, which also represented fire. This sword was one of the moves of the 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique. Kill! The tip of Yi Guqin's sword touched the crimson-red hexagram, and in an instant, the entire sword seemed to turn crimson-red. Yi Guqin swept out with his sword, and an unprecedentedly violent shockwave spread out. The 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique was an upper-grade royal-level sword technique. Even if it was only one of the 8 moves, its power far exceeded that of a lower-grade royal-level sword technique. What kind of sword technique is this? Chao Hu was shocked, and he took a deep breath. The shockwave of the sword chi made him feel a little scared. Puff! As Yi Guqin swung his sword, a huge crimson sword light swept out, as if turning heaven and earth into a sea of fire. A roar was heard. The liger beast was cut in half by the crimson sword light, and it died immediately. The fire-cloud fox and the blazebolt leopard also roared in anger, and scorch marks appeared on their bodies. Ancient God Spear. Yi Guqin stretched out his other hand and grabbed at the void. As the ancient god power surged, a golden battle spear appeared in his hand. Yi Guqin held the ancient god spear in his hand and threw it out. It turned into a golden rainbow, and once again pierced the fire-cloud fox's body. No! Chao Hu's eyes were red. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate these 3 monsters, and they were also Chao Hu's strongest moves. But now, 2 of them had been killed by Yi Guqin. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique, Mountain's Peak. Yi Guqin changed his sword move again, and a brown-colored hexagram appeared in the void. It was the Gen hexagram, which represented the mountain. This sword was different from the fire's peak. It represented the weight of the mountain, as if it could suppress 10,000 caddies. The tip of the sword vibrated, and it was as if an ancient mountain was pressing down. It directly crushed the last blazebolt leopard into minced meat. Damn it, Duga Wubai, you have to pay the price. The veins on Chao Hu's temples bulged, and his face was ferocious. The three monsters that he had spent a lot of effort to cultivate had all been killed. At this moment, while Chao Hu was furious, he also felt a little regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would not have agreed to deal with Yiguchen for the sake of some benefits from the pink playboy. He seemed to have seen a flash of regret in Chao Hu's eyes. Yiguchen said coldly, "Are you regretting it now?" "It's too late." Seeing this, Chao Hu's face was ferocious. He took out a magic weapon that looked like a horn, and said sternly, "Duga Wubai, I have seen the power of a natural saint, but you still can't kill me." "Oh." Yiguchen was curious and tilted his head slightly. "This is a special magic weapon of the demonic beast sect, called the demonic beast horn. As long as I blow it, it will release a special sound wave that will attract monsters from all directions. At that time, you won't be able to escape death." Chao Hu was cornered and had no choice but to take out his trump card. "Then you can try." Yiguchen ignored him and attacked with his sword. "Damn it." Chao Hu blew the demonic beast horn directly. Woo woo. A special sound wave spread out, and a moment later, there was movement in the forest. Rumble. Once again, many ferocious beasts gathered. "You're courting death. Don't blame me." Chao Hu laughed maniacally. He only wanted Yiguchen to die. However, squeak squeak. Blackie jumped out and squeaked, as if it was shouting something angrily. When the squeak came out, the monsters that were charging over immediately stopped and began to retreat like the tide. Blackie was an existence that even the dark dragon ape respected. How could these monsters dare to offend it? This is impossible, absolutely impossible. Chao Hu was going crazy. His eyes were bloodshot as he blew the demonic beast horn crazily. However, the monsters still retreated and did not stop. How could this be? Chao Hu knelt on the ground, terrified. The demonic beast horn was the treasure of the demonic beast sect, and it had never failed. "It's this monkey." Chao Hu stared at Blackie. "Now you know how I got away. I'm merciful enough to let you die knowing the truth." Yiguchen's face was indifferent. No, I can help you deal with the pink playboy." Chao Hu was completely panicked. He knelt on the ground and began to beg for mercy with a pale face. Although the geniuses on the blood ranking of the Maluo dynasty looked fierce, they were all the same when facing death. "It's too late," Yiguchen swung his sword at Chao Hu. Chapter 1050. Yiguchen had an indifferent temperament and was not a particularly kind person. In addition, Chao Hu's actions had already filled Yiguchen with murderous intent. Therefore, the result was not surprising at all. The sword in Yiguchen's hand vibrated and slashed Chao Hu's throat. Chao Hu's head was sent flying along with blood. The 10th on the blood ranking of the Maro dynasty had died. Chao Hu's last expression was frozen with horror and deep regret. If he could do it all over again, he would never agree to help the pink playboy deal with Yiguchen for a little benefit. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Chao Hu had to pay the price for his wrong choice, his life. "Wait, I will let the pink playboy accompany you." Yiguchen's voice was cold. Chao Hu indeed deserved to be killed, but there was another instigator who deserved to be killed even more, the pink playboy. "We can't delay any longer. Hurry up and find the entrance to the sacred dynasty's legacy." After killing Chao Hu, Yiguchen also began to go deeper into the Thousand Demons' nest. Compared to the other sky prides, he had fallen far behind. He might not be able to find the entrance to the sacred dynasty's legacy immediately. However, the sacred dynasty's legacy might be quite strange and complicated, so Yiguchen was not too worried that he would lose the opportunity. With Blackie by his side, almost no beast in the Thousand Demons' nest dared to attack Yiguchen. Therefore, Yiguchen's progress was exceptionally smooth, and he soon went deep into the mountain range of the Thousand Demons' Nest. Along the way, Yiguchen also saw countless broken limbs and remains of beasts. Of course, there were also some sky prides from the four dynasties. One could imagine how fierce the battle between the sky prides and the beasts was. Of course, Yiguchen did not see any top-tier sky prides among the corpses. With the strength of Jiankui, Hua Wuxiu, and the others, these beasts could not cause fatal injuries to them. 2 hours later, Yiguchen finally received news about the entrance to the Sacred Dynasty's legacy. He rushed toward that place. A quarter of an hour later, Yiguchen arrived at a very secluded valley. The entire valley was shaped like a horseshoe and was surrounded by all kinds of vines and plants. Looking from afar, there was no entrance at all. So it's in such a secluded place, Yiguchen muttered. It was no wonder that the relics of the Sacred Dynasty had not been discovered for so long. First of all, not many people dared to come to a place like the Myriad Demon's Nest. Secondly, the entrance was too well hidden and difficult to find. But now, the entrance had been opened up by the Sky Prides who had entered earlier. Yiguchen could enter directly. At this moment, a sobbing voice came from behind Yiguchen. Then, a petite figure threw herself into Yiguchen's arms. Master! Who else could it be but Mu Xingzu? Not far away, Ling Mo Shu, Ling Moyin, Xuanlian, Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and other disciples of Sacred Cliff College appeared one after another. Little Yi, fortunately, I did not disappoint you. The divine condor flapped its wings and flew in the air to lead the way. Master, please don't do that again next time, okay? Mu Xingzu's eyes were hazy. Although she had confidence in Yiguchen, she was also afraid that there would be an accident. I'm sorry to have made you worry. Yiguchen patted Mu Xingzu's head. Ling Moyin and Han Lingxian were also relieved, but they still had lingering fears. However, when they looked at Mu Xingzu, their gazes were filled with envy. Mu Xingzu could throw herself into Yiguchen's arms without any scruples, but they could not. Yiguchen glanced around and found that many disciples of Sacred Cliff College were missing. He felt a little guilty and said, I'm sorry, everyone. It's all because of me, Brother Dugu, don't say that. Ling Mo Shu immediately interrupted him. That's right. If it weren't for Senior Dugu, I'm afraid we would have been wiped out. That's right. Senior Dugu risked his life to help us escape. We can't thank him enough. Some disciples of Sacred Cliff College spoke one after another. Thank you for your understanding. I've already taken Chao Hu's life. Next, I'll kill Pink Playboy to pay tribute to my dead brothers, Yiguchen said firmly. What? Chao Hu is dead. He's a ruthless man who ranked 10th on the blood ranking of the Maro dynasty. He was killed by Senior Dugu just like that. Hearing Yiguchen's words, all the disciples of Sacred Cliff College looked at each other in dismay. A blood-ranking prodigy was killed so easily. And he said it so casually, as if he had just killed a chicken. Looking at everyone's slightly stunned expression, Yiguchen shook his head and said, This is nothing. Let's hurry up and enter the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Yiguchen's reminder brought everyone back to reality. They went straight into the valley. Sure enough, in the valley, they found an incomparably huge underground cave, which seemed to lead to the underground. Divine Eagle, Blackie, can you provide support outside? Yiguchen asked. He did not know what would happen in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Just in case, he asked the Divine Eagle and Blackie to provide support outside. They could contact the green-eyed Golden Eagle and the Dark Dragon Ape, which could increase their protection in case of an emergency. No problem. Grandpa Condor will guard outside for you. The Divine Eagle patted its chest and said. Good. Yiguchen and the disciples of Sacred Cliff College entered the cave. The cave was dark and deep, with cold wind gushing out from it. It seems that the space below should be very big. Yiguchen guessed. After half an hour, Yiguchen and the others finally reached the bottom of the cave. When they looked over, they were shocked. In front of them was an incomparably huge underground space. It was like an underground world that was independent of the world. In this underground world, there were also all kinds of strange-looking plants growing underground. There were also all kinds of minerals that emitted fluorescent light, which made the whole underground world strange. Is this the sacred dynasty's treasure? Everyone took a deep breath. In this underground world, there were all kinds of dilapidated ruins everywhere, covered with vines and plants. It was very ancient. Everyone, be careful. Yiguchen reminded. A sacred dynasty's treasure must be dangerous. They explored carefully. Suddenly, a towering stone wall appeared in front of them, and there was an entrance. At the entrance, they found all kinds of footprints and traces of entry. It should be the heavenly talents who entered the sacred dynasty's treasure first. They all went in from here. Yiguchen thought. Then he turned around and said, "Everyone, be careful. I will walk in the front, you follow closely behind." Yiguchen did not want to put the disciples of Sacred Cliff College in danger, so he took the lead. Yiguchen was the first to enter. There were all kinds of crooked paths inside the wall. There were also walls on all sides, which could not be broken through. Crack! Not long after Yiguchen walked in, a stone wall suddenly rose from the ground behind him, separating Yiguchen from the Sacred Cliff College team behind him. Yiguchen's eyes flashed, and he slashed at the stone wall with his sword. After a violent explosion, the stone wall was actually undamaged. At this moment, the path changed again, and Yiguchen suddenly led to another path. Is this a maze? Yiguchen suddenly realized. Chapter 1051. Yiguchen did not expect that there would be a maze in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. However, if it was just a maze, Yiguchen did not mind. Because Yiguchen had the chaotic spiritual sea, his divine soul's perception range and sensitivity were far better than ordinary people. A maze of this level would not be able to trap him. I hope the others are fine. Yiguchen shook his head and sighed, then began to search for a way out. The entire maze would change the position of the passage in real time, and stone walls would rise from the ground from time to time, blocking the way. Yiguchen spread out his divine soul's perception and found that the surrounding stone walls also had the effect of blocking soul power. What a strange place. Yiguchen sighed. After 15 minutes, Yiguchen suddenly stopped in his tracks. There was a rustling sound coming from the dark part of the path ahead. Just as Yiguchen was concentrating, there were a few sounds of wind breaking. It was a few darts. Yiguchen used wave-like subtle steps to dodge the attack. His eyes narrowed, and he said in surprise, "No, it's leaves." At this time, the figure that caused the noise appeared. It was not the other geniuses or demonic beasts that Yiguchen expected. It was a tree. That's right, it was a pitch-black tree. Its thick roots were like human legs. The branches were as sharp as spears, and the leaves were like darts that flickered with cold light. The entire tree was covered with strange demonic patterns, as if it had been contaminated. What is this? Yiguchen was very surprised. He had heard that some plant creatures were very powerful. Some plants could even cultivate into a peerless expert. However, it was Yiguchen's first time encountering such a strange scene. Swoosh! The creepy demonic tree sensed Yiguchen's presence. Without any hesitation, its branches, which were as sharp as spears, tore through the air and stabbed at Yiguchen. Yiguchen held the 9-dragon thunder prison and swung his sword. Clang! The demonic tree's branches and the 9-dragon thunder prison emitted the sound of metal clashing, and dazzling sparks flew out. How could this be? Yiguchen was very surprised. The 9-dragon thunder prison was a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon. Its sharpness was needless to say. It could cut through iron like mud and cut through gold and jade. But now, he was unable to directly cut off the strange demonic tree's branches. Something strange, Yiguchen muttered to himself. Clang! 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 What followed was a series of fights. The strange demon tree was extremely hard and powerful. Ordinary divine-dwelling experts might not be able to withstand it. However, Yiguchen's strength wasn't something an ordinary heaven pride of the divine-dwelling stage could compare to. Hence, he remained calm and composed. Su Qingyu's voice sounded in Yiguchen's mind. Yiguchen, there seems to be a wisp of the longevity ancient's aura on this strange demon tree. Longevity ancient? Yiguchen was a little puzzled. Do you remember the 3 items I mentioned before to refine my clone? One of them is the longevity wood core, Su Qingyu reminded. Could it be? Yiguchen immediately reacted. Could the longevity wood core be the core of the longevity ancient tree? And now, there was a wisp of the longevity ancient's aura on the strange demon tree. Didn't that mean that there were likely to be traces of the longevity ancient tree in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove? Thinking of this, Yiguchen's eyes lit up with excitement. If that was the case, Yiguchen must get the longevity ancient tree's core. Yiguchen, attack the center of the strange ancient tree, Su Qingyu reminded. Hearing this, Yiguchen infused the 9-colored dark thunder into his sword. The sword directly pierced the center of the strange ancient tree. Puff! The sword pierced through the ancient tree, producing a dull sound. The strange ancient tree immediately froze, then turned into wisps of black gas and dust. What was left was an emerald green crystal about the size of a fingernail. Yiguchen reached out and picked it up. This is... Yiguchen felt that the emerald green crystal contained a strong life aura. This is the crystal formed by a wisp of the longevity ancient tree's life spiritual qi, Su Qingyu explained. It seems that the longevity ancient tree is most likely in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Yiguchen was even more certain after hearing this news. He already had the bone-molding sacred elixir, and now he had the news of the longevity wood core. As for the soul source crystal, it might also be in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. If things went well, Yiguchen was very likely to be able to gather the materials to refine his clone. By then, after the clone was refined, Yiguchen would be able to use the power of the God Devourer sword. Let's leave this maze quickly and find the longevity ancient tree. Yiguchen made a decision. He continued moving forward. Along the way, he encountered a few more strange demonic trees, as well as the various dynasties' skyprides who had been killed by the demonic trees. After defeating a few demonic trees, Yiguchen also obtained a few emerald green crystals. Yiguchen suddenly stopped in front of him. Because he saw a few corpses, all of which had died miserably. All of their blood had been sucked dry, and they looked like withered corpses. This is Mengu, the war god dynasty's skypride. Although he was not ranked in the top 10, he was ranked 13th. This is Dijin from the Tyrant Sword Dynasty, also ranked in the top 10 on the sword leaderboard. And the Sword Dynasty's skyprides ranked in the top 10 or 20 on the sword leaderboard. Looking at the withered corpses scattered around, Yiguchen frowned. These skyprides were all famous, and they were not weak at all. But now, they had all died like this. And the way they died was strange. It did not seem like they were killed by the strange demonic trees. At that moment, the ground under Yiguchen's feet suddenly exploded. Several blood-red vines drilled out of the ground and directly bound Yiguchen. Yiguchen's heart skipped a beat. Yiguchen was still in a daze at this sudden action. And these blood-red vines seemed to be able to block soul perception, so Yiguchen did not notice them. These vines were like dumplings, binding Yiguchen. A strong suction force was emitted, and Yiguchen's blood was involuntarily sucked away by the vines. Now, Yiguchen finally knew how those withered corpses were formed. These vines were obviously more powerful and difficult to deal with than the strange demonic trees. If it were an ordinary person, their blood would have been sucked dry in a few breaths, Yiguchen thought to himself. But he was different. He had a perfect body and an ancient god's body, not to mention the heart of the ancient god sealed in his body. If he burst out with his blood, it would be enough to burst the vines. Just as Yiguchen was about to use his strength to break free from the vine's bindings. Suddenly, there was the sound of wind breaking from both sides of the road. Yiguchen looked over. On one side of the road, there were two men in martial attire, one holding a golden saber and the other a silver saber. They were the gold and silver sabers of the Tyrant Saber dynasty, Jin Huan and Yin Gu. The two of them almost immediately noticed Yiguchen, who was bound by the vines. However, before the two of them could show any surprise. On the other side of the road, there was a surprised voice. Dugu Wubai, I can't believe I met you. Yiguchen turned his gaze and saw two more figures appear on the other side of the road. The one who spoke was a handsome man in white. It was none other than Ouyang Fengyun. The person beside him was also an old acquaintance, Ouyang Tianji. It's really a small world for enemies. Yiguchen could not help but sigh in his heart. He just happened to be bound by the vines and so happened to meet his old enemies. Chapter 1052. Jin Huan and Yin Gu were stunned when they saw Yiguchen, then their eyes lit up. In the ancient chaos wasteland, Yiguchen was just a nobody. But now, he had become a natural saint, and his name had spread throughout the neighboring dynasties. When Jin Huan and Yin Gu heard all kinds of news about Yiguchen, their hearts were uneasy. They hadn't forgotten that they'd made a move to seize a map fragment from Yiguchen in the ancient chaos wasteland. That wasn't a small grudge. Therefore, Jin Huan and Yin Gu were afraid of Yiguchen's revenge. But they didn't think that what they were afraid of would come true. They actually met Yiguchen. The only difference was that Yiguchen was currently bound by the vampiric demon vines and couldn't move. Big brother, is this the will of the heavens? Yin Gu's eyes flashed coldly. When they saw Yiguchen, they almost wanted to turn and run. But when they saw Yiguchen in danger, they calmed down. Not only did they meet Yiguchen, but it was Yiguchen who was in danger. Was this not the will of the heavens? There are people on the other side as well. They're from the Sword Dynasty. Jin Huan was very cautious as he looked at the other side. After all, Yiguchen was a prodigy of the Sword Dynasty. If the people on the other side helped, wouldn't the two of them be in a passive position? On the other side, Ouyang Fengyun and Ouyang Tianji were also surprised when they saw Yiguchen. That kind of surprise was the surprise of seeing prey fall into a trap. They also didn't think that they would meet Yiguchen when he was trapped. This was the will of the heavens. Ha, Dugu Wubai, it's really you. Ouyang Fengyun walked out calmly. Dugu Wubai, we really met you. Ouyang Tianji didn't hide the hatred in his eyes. It could be said that the two of them had been made miserable by Yiguchen. However, they had never reflected on their actions. Every single time, they were the ones who provoked Yiguchen first. Yiguchen had never taken the initiative to target them. In the ancient chaos wasteland, it was Ouyang Fengyun who took the initiative to stop Yiguchen from obtaining the map fragment. In the end, the two brothers thought that it was Yiguchen who had bullied them and humiliated them. So it's you. Although Yiguchen was trapped, his expression was incomparably calm. He looked at the Ouyang brothers and then at the gold and silver sabers. They were all enemies. Dugu Wubai, you were so glorious in the 5 academies competition, but now you seem to be in a bad situation, Ouyang Fengyun said calmly, as if he had regained his confidence. So, are you going to make a move? Yiguchen's expression was indifferent. Hey, that's Ouyang Fengyun. They seem to have a grudge against Dugu Wubai, Jin Huan said in surprise. Hearing this, Yin Gu said, Ouyang Fengyun, if we make a move against Dugu Wubai, will you stop us? The gold and silver sabers were still not sure if Ouyang Fengyun would stop them. After all, they were all heaven's prides of the Sword Dynasty. It was still possible for them to unite against the common enemy. Stop us? Ha, I can't wait to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Do you think I won't stop you? Ouyang Fengyun revealed a cold smile. In the 5 academies competition, Yiguchen had humiliated him. He couldn't wait for Yiguchen to fall. Why would he help him? That's good. It seems that we have the same goal. Yin Gu laughed. After offending Yiguchen, they couldn't eat or sleep in peace. Now that they had the chance to get rid of this threat, Jin Huan and Yin Gu couldn't wait. Are you sure you want to make a move? I didn't care too much about what happened before. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he said indifferently. At that time, the main reason why Yi Guchen's map fragment was snatched was because of Ouyang Fengyun's obstruction. The gold and silver sabers were just snatched along the way. Yi Guchen didn't particularly hate the two of them. But now, if the two of them were to make a move, the nature would be different. I'm sorry. Firstly, it's because of the grudge in the ancient chaotic wasteland. Secondly, it's because you've grown too quickly. Jin Huan's tone was cold with a trace of jealousy. That's right. You're a natural-born saint. Killing a natural-born saint will make us brothers famous. Yin Gu's tone was filled with killing intent. To put it bluntly, there was an element of jealousy. They wanted to step on Yi Guchen's corpse and become famous. All right then. Do as you wish. Yi Guchen nodded and didn't say anything else. In his heart, he had already given the gold and silver sabers a death sentence. Jin Huan and Yin Gu held onto their sabers as they approached Yi Guchen with sinister smiles on their faces. It was as if they could already see Yi Guchen falling under their sabers. Dugu Wubai, if you're willing to beg me for mercy, perhaps I can only cripple your cultivation and spare your dog life. Ouyang Fengyun's tone was filled with mockery. He naturally wouldn't spare Yi Guchen's life. He only wanted to humiliate Yi Guchen before he died. You've made a mistake. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. What do you mean? Ouyang Fengyun raised his eyebrows. You've made a mistake by speaking too much nonsense and giving me time to prepare. Yi Guchen shook his head. Hearing this, the four people's hearts skipped a beat. However, Ouyang Fengyun instantly laughed coldly. Dugu Wubai, don't even think about bluffing. Do you think I don't know that not only are you unable to break free from the blood-sucking demonic vines that bind you, they'll also continuously suck your blood. Even if you don't touch us, you'll be sucked dry sooner or later. That's right. Dugu Wubai, don't even think about bluffing us. Ouyang Tianji was also relieved. Let's go. Jin Huan and Yin Gu immediately drew their sabers without any hesitation. You are really stupid. Yi Guchen laughed coldly. True Qi burst out from his body as streaks of ancient god light appeared on the surface of his skin. Yi Guchen immediately activated his ancient god form. At the same time, he forced out a few drops of ancient god blood from his ancient god heart. Vigorous blood qi surged out along with his true qi. Break. As Yi Guchen said this word, the ancient god power in his body surged and burst out with boundless divine power. A few cracking sounds could be heard. The extremely tough blood-sucking demonic vines were actually torn apart by Yi Guchen. A loud rumbling sound could be heard. Under the ground, a bud-like plant exploded. Blood splattered everywhere as the smell of blood filled the air. It was the blood-sucking demonic vine's main body. The blood-sucking demonic vines were actually forcefully blown apart by the vigorous blood qi of the ancient god blood. It was like giving a weak person a great tonic. In the end, the person couldn't digest it and died. When the flower bud exploded, a fist-sized emerald green crystal also appeared. Yi Guchen casually put it away. Next, Yi Guchen's cold gaze swept across the gold and silver sabers as well as the two Ouyang brothers. Jin Huan and Yin Gu's charging footsteps suddenly stopped. An unprecedented look of shock appeared on their faces. The hand holding the sabers was slightly trembling. When they were in the ancient chaos wasteland, they might not even be able to defeat Yi Guchen, let alone now. Ouyang Fengyun and Ouyang Tianji's faces were also stupefied. Their pupils had shrunk to the size of a needle's eye. Their breathing almost stopped. They felt as if an invisible hand was gripping their throats tightly. Next, it's your turn. Yi Guchen brushed the tip of the nine-dragon thunder prison with his hand. The sound of the sword clanging. That was the sound of death. Chapter 1053. Murderous intent surged in Yi Guchen's eyes. Ouyang Fengyun and Ouyang Tianji didn't need to be mentioned. They had obstructed Yiguchen many times and brought trouble to Yiguchen. Although Yiguchen didn't care about them, he still felt annoyed. As for the gold and silver blades, Yiguchen had already given them a chance. But the two of them didn't cherish it and still decided to kill Yiguchen. Yiguchen wouldn't hold back at all. Since you chose to attack, you must be prepared to be killed. Yiguchen poured his true chi into the 9-dragon thunder prison and an ear-piercing sword hum sounded. It was the knell of death. Damn it, how did you break free? Ouyang Fengyun's expression became unprecedentedly ugly and felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on his heart. The plant life in the labyrinth was extremely strange and powerful. They believed that Yiguchen wouldn't be able to break free from the blood-sucking demonic vines, which was why they were so arrogant. As for Ouyang Tianji, his performance was even worse and he was extremely terrified. If Ouyang Fengyun was said to be able to exchange a few blows with Yiguchen. But in front of Yiguchen, he could only be chopped up. Triple Ultimate Holy Sword, Reversal of Stars and Moon. Yiguchen displayed his sword moves and the Star-Breaking Sword and Moon Sword were displayed at the same time. The scene of stars and moon appeared and swept towards Ouyang Fengyun and the others. Gold and silver blades, let's attack together. We might be able to fight against Duga Wubai. Ouyang Fengyun roared and started to resist. Jin Huan and Yin Gu heard this and gritted their teeth and continued to attack. They already knew that their attitude just now had completely angered Yiguchen. Yiguchen wouldn't let them off so easily. Instead of stretching out his neck and waiting to be slaughtered, he might as well fight with all his might. Broken Bone Blade. Jin Huan slashed out with his blade, and a biting cold blade chi burst out. 6-Ren Divine Blade. Yin Gu attacked as well. 6 blade lights shot towards Yiguchen. Facing the attacks from the gold and silver blades, Yiguchen countered with a starry sun-flowing fire. The mighty sword chi seemed to have turned into a tide of magma, colliding with the attack of the gold and silver knives. Rumble. Another great battle broke out here. Yiguchen was fighting 1 against 3, and he was not at a disadvantage at all. As for Ouyang Tianji, the threat he posed to Yiguchen was almost zero. After a few dozen moves, Yiguchen didn't want to delay any longer and immediately used his ultimate move. The Qian Yang Sword of Extinction and the Kun Moon Sword of Extinction were unleashed together. Universe Extermination. Yiguchen swung his sword, and a destructive sword chi burst out. In an instant, it pierced through Ouyang Fengyun's chest, causing his chest to explode and his organs to fly everywhere. Bits of bloody flesh fell on Ouyang Tianji, who was at the side. His body was numb and he was trembling all over. I hate. Ouyang Fengyun's eyes popped out, and his face twisted. His white clothes were stained with blood. His chest was pierced from the front to the back, and he felt a chill. Plop. Ouyang Fengyun, ranked 9th on the sword leaderboard, had fallen. No. No. Duga Wubai, I was once a disciple of Sacred Cliff College. You can't kill me. Ouyang Tianji was scared out of his wits, and his body trembled like a quail. He was truly afraid. Endless fear drowned his heart and soul. You seem to have left Sacred Cliff College a long time ago. You even went against Ling Mo Shu and the others during the 5 Academies tournament. Yiguchen's tone was indifferent. No. Ouyang Tianji turned around and was about to escape. Yiguchen casually stabbed out, and sword chi burst out, piercing through Ouyang Tianji's heart. Another person had fallen. Damn it, on the other side, Jin Huan and Yin Gu's bodies trembled. The 2 Ouyang brothers had fallen in the span of a few breaths, and they didn't have time to escape. It's your turn. Yiguchen turned around and looked at the gold and silver blades. Duga Wubai, we'll leave now. We'll definitely not provoke you in the future. Jin Huan said with a pale face. Yes, yes, yes. We'll take a detour if we see you in the future. How about that? Yin Gu hurriedly added. Yiguchen sighed and said, I've already given you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. As soon as he finished speaking, Yiguchin's feet flashed, and a sword light flashed across the void, flying towards the gold and silver blades. Dugu Wubai were also related to Mo Guangdao, who's ranked 5th on the sword leaderboard. If he knows that you killed us, he won't let you go. Seeing Yiguchin's attack, their faces changed, and Jin Huan roared. Mo Guangdao. Yiguchin's lips curled into a cold smile. He knew a little about this person. He was ranked 5th on the sword leaderboard, and his strength was extraordinary. This time, he had entered the sacred dynasty treasure together with them. But would Yiguchin be afraid? Of course not. Not to mention the 5th on the sword leaderboard, even if it was the 1st on the sword leaderboard, Yiguchin wouldn't be threatened. A scarlet trigram appeared in the void. Yiguchin's sword edge broke the trigram, and his entire sword turned scarlet. With a stab, it was as if there was an explosive current sweeping out. Bone-shattering blade. Heavenly rock slash. The gold and silver blades naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for their deaths. They also used their ultimate moves. But the result was still as expected. Ah! Accompanied by heart-wrenching screams, Jin Huan and Yin Gu turned into 2 charred corpses in the explosive sword chi. Their charred faces were still frozen with deep regret and unwillingness. If they hadn't coveted the reputation of killing a natural saint, perhaps the result would have been completely different. Yiguchin's sword edge shook, and the 2 charred corpses turned into dust and scattered. After killing these 4 people, Yiguchin continued to the maze. Along the way, he also killed some strange plants and harvested some emerald green crystals. These emerald green crystals contained a thick aura of life, and it was quite good to use as healing medicine. Not long after, Yiguchin once again sensed the sounds of fighting in front of him. He was slightly cautious and looked over. He saw a beautiful figure fighting with a strange plant. It's her. Seeing that person, Yiguchin raised his eyebrows. That beautiful figure was none other than Tianxian College's Suki Miyazaki. But at this moment, Suki Miyazaki's appearance was slightly miserable, and she didn't have the image of a noble goddess from before. Her tight-fitting palace dress had many holes in it, revealing her snow-white skin. The hem of her dress was also torn, revealing her snow-white legs. And her opponent was a man-eating flower-like plant. From the flower bud, it continuously spat out sticky liquid, corroding Suki Miyazaki's delicate body. Suki Miyazaki could barely use her vital energy to prevent her skin from being damaged, but she couldn't prevent her palace dress from being corroded, so she was in a rather sorry state. Damn it! Suki Miyazaki gritted her teeth, and her beautiful face showed a touch of shame and anger. This man-eating flower was very strong, and even the divine-dwelling heavens prodigies had a hard time dealing with it. As if sensing Yiguchin's presence, Suki Miyazaki's beautiful face turned to Yiguchin, and just as she was about to ask for help, she saw that it was Yiguchin. The words of help were choked in her throat. Her beautiful face alternated between green and white, and on the one hand, she was a little embarrassed because Yiguchin saw her sorry state at this moment. On the other hand, it was because she and Mu Xingzu were considered enemies, although they weren't the kind of enemies who fought to the death. And Yiguchin was Mu Xingzu's master. It was naturally very awkward to meet at this moment. Not to mention, she had looked down on Yiguchin many times, both openly and secretly. How could she have the nerve to ask Yiguchin for help? But if she didn't ask for help, the situation would be even worse. For a moment, Suki Miyazaki's pink face alternated between green and red, and her heart was in a mess. Chapter 1054. But compared to Suki Miyazaki, Yiguchin did not think so much. He almost did not hesitate and chose to make a move. One of the reasons was naturally because Tianxian College was in the camp of individual cultivators, and Suki Miyazaki was a prodigy in the camp of individual cultivators, so it was natural for her to lend a helping hand. Secondly, it was also because when Zimo and the others were bullied by Yin Ju in the Sword Catacomb, Suki Miyazaki stepped in at the right time to stop them. Although she did not help too much, it was still a favor. As for the relationship between Suki Miyazaki and Mu Xingzu, Yiguchin did not think too much about it. As long as there was not too much hatred, it did not matter. Therefore, Yi-Gu-chin did not hesitate. With the 9-dragon thunder prison in hand, he joined the battle. Seeing Yi-Gu-chin make a move without hesitation, Suki Miyazaki bit her red lips. Her face could not help but heat up slightly. It was because of shame. Not only did she underestimate Yi-Gu-chin's strength before, she also underestimated Yi-Gu-chin's character. In contrast, Suki Miyazaki felt like a bitter woman. With Yi-Gu-chin's intervention, the man-eating demon flower was destroyed in less than 15 minutes. Dugu wubai, thank you. Suki Miyazaki's tone was a little jerky and unnatural. It's no problem, we're all on the same side. Yi-Gu-chin waved his hand and did not care. I had some friction with Mu Xingzu before. Suki Miyazaki wanted to say something but stopped. It's okay, that girl also needs a good opponent to hone her skills, Yi-Gu-chin said calmly. Mu Xingzu also told him that although Suki Miyazaki always targeted her, she did not use any underhanded means. It was just a normal confrontation. Yi-Gu-chin naturally did not care about such things. Also, I've been prejudiced against you many times. Suki Miyazaki bit her lip and told the truth. Then you don't have to worry about it. Yi-Gu-chin shook his head and laughed. Was he someone who cared about this kind of criticism? Looking at Yi-Gu-chin's carefree and bright smile, Suki Miyazaki felt a little ashamed. Her temperament was indeed much worse than Yi-Gu-chin's. Alright, let's clean up. After all, Yi-Gu-chin paused and looked away. It was only then that Suki Miyazaki realized that the palace dress she was wearing was torn in many places, revealing her fair skin. Her ears instantly turned red. She hurriedly hid in a dark corner and changed into a palace dress. After tidying up, he reunited with Yi-Gu-chin. However, her face was still red. It made her, who had always had a noble temperament, look a little shy and cute. What do you plan to do next? Yi-Gu-chin's expression was calm. Can I go with you? Suki Miyazaki asked tentatively. She realized that Yi-Gu-chin could give her a sense of security. Alright. Yi-Gu-chin nodded slightly. Then, the two of them walked together. Along the way, they encountered some strange plants and killed them along the way. We should be out of this maze soon. After another hour, Yi-Gu-chin murmured. His astral perception could now extend further, which meant that they were already at the edge of the maze. Suki Miyazaki secretly sighed in relief. At this time, there was movement in front of them again. There were also voices. Yi-Gu-chin signaled Suki Miyazaki to be careful with his eyes. Then, he slowly approached them. Yi-Gu-chin breathed a sigh of relief when he saw those figures. Suki Miyazaki also let down her guard. This was because they saw two familiar figures. Kenpo and Jian Shi. Brother Kenpo. Yi-Gu-chin stepped forward. Kenpo and Jian Shi immediately turned around vigilantly. When they saw that it was Yi-Gu-chin, they sighed in relief. Kenpo was even more surprised. Brother Dugu, I knew you'd be fine. What are you doing here? Kenpo and Jian Shi were silent when they heard that. Yi-Gu-chin looked around and suddenly saw a corpse lying on the ground. That's Swordsman 10. Yi-Gu-chin's eyes suddenly focused. Suki Miyazaki also covered her mouth with her hand. She looked extremely surprised. One of the swordsmen had actually died. This was definitely not a small matter. To be able to become one of the 13 swordsmen, no matter what, he definitely had some skills. It was absolutely impossible for him to die so easily. Moreover, Swordsman 10 was the swordsman of the individual cultivators' camp. But whether they believed it or not, the figure lying in the pool of blood with a mask on his face was undoubtedly Swordsman 10. What happened? Yi-Gu-chin stepped forward. He did not believe that a swordsman would die in the hands of those strange plants. Yi-Gu-chin took a closer look and found that Swordsman 10's throat had been slit by a sword. There was no sign of resistance at all. More importantly, that sword mark. Yiguchen wanted to say something but stopped. He felt that the sword mark was slightly familiar. The swordsmanship shown by the sword mark should be the fatal 13 swords. Kenpo's tone was very heavy. It's really... Yiguchen was a little surprised. No wonder he felt a trace of familiarity. Because when they were in the sword catacomb, Jian Shisan had once used the fatal 13 swords to spar with him. And now, swordsman 10 had been killed by the fatal 13 swords. There was no doubt about the result. Could Jian Shisan be a spy from the aristocratic families? Suki Miyazaki could not help but ask. No, I don't believe it. Little 13 can't be a spy from the aristocratic families. Jian Shi screamed. He did not want to believe it at all. Yiguchen frowned and fell into deep thought. He remembered Jian Shisan's warning to him at that time. If you want to live, don't participate in the sword master battle. At that time, Yiguchen was slightly puzzled as to why Jian Shisan would say that. Now, it seemed that if Jian Shisan was a spy from the aristocratic families, then everything would make sense. No, why don't you believe little 13? He has been alone since he was young. How could he betray us and join the aristocratic families? Jian Shi argued vehemently. But other than Jian Shisan, who else would use the fatal 13 swords? Suki Miyazaki asked. Jian Shi was speechless. Yiguchen thought in his heart and said, although this wound is from the fatal 13 swords, it does not have the aura of the lifeless swordsmanship. Of course, it could be that he did not use it. Kenpo suddenly asked, if you were Jian Shisan, would you be stupid enough to use your signature swordsmanship to kill people? As soon as he said that, the atmosphere fell silent. Jian Shi said in surprise, yes, this is obviously the enemy's plan to sow discord. They want us to misunderstand little 13 and even attack him. That is possible. After all, little 13 and Jian Jinghong are two people who can threaten Jiankoe. Kenpo also said. No matter what, let's take one step at a time. Don't jump to conclusions. Yiguchen said. He had a feeling that things were not so simple. And Jian Shisan's warning to him. What was Jian Shisan's position? Ha, I knew it. The aristocratic families must be plotting something. Unfortunately, we also have a trump card. Kenpo sneered. Oh, what is it? Yiguchen was a little curious. Kenpo smiled faintly and did not say much. In another place in the maze, a masked swordsman was advancing. He was Jian 12, a swordsman of the aristocratic families. His strength was not weak. At this moment, there was a sudden movement behind him. Jian 12 turned around abruptly. When he saw the person, he could not help but feel relieved. He shook his head and said with a smile, so it's you. You scared me. However, as soon as he said that, pfft, a sword light flashed past and pierced through Jian 12's heart. Sword 12 covered his bleeding chest with his hand, the pupils under the mask widened, revealing extreme disbelief. You, why? Thump. Jian 12 fell to the ground. Another swordsman had fallen. Who should I kill next? This figure smiled faintly and turned to leave. Chapter 1055. Sacred Dynasty Legacy, Inside the Labyrinth. Massacres were happening all the time. Battles between the Heaven Prides and the Strange Plants. Battles between the Heaven Prides of the Four Empires. Or perhaps it was the internal strife of the Sword Dynasty. All in all, many Heaven Prides had died in the labyrinth. As for Yiguchen and the others, they were not in much danger. Yiguchen's strength was needless to say, and Suki Miyazaki was also a divine-dwelling Heaven Pride. There were also the two sword sons, Kenpo and Jian Shi. With the four of them together, they were extremely safe. All the strange plants they encountered along the way were directly killed. Some of the Heaven Prides from the other empires also retreated without the slightest hesitation when they saw such a luxurious lineup. After another hour, when Yiguchen and the others walked out of another passage, the path ahead suddenly opened up, and there were no more twists and turns. We're finally out. Suki Miyazaki patted her breasts and breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the labyrinth was too oppressive. I wonder how the others are. Yiguchin couldn't help but worry about Mu Xingzu and the people from Sacred Cliff College. Brother Dugu, let's continue to go deeper, Kenpo said. Yiguchin nodded slightly. The entire underground space was extremely vast. After walking out of the labyrinth, Yiguchin vaguely sensed that there seemed to be an extremely strong life aura in the distance. That aura was the same as the emerald crystal Yiguchin had obtained. Could it be the longevity ancient tree? Yiguchin's heart sank. The longevity ancient tree core was very important to him, and he couldn't afford to lose it. I seem to have sensed a treasure land, Yiguchin said, and rushed straight towards the place with rich life energy. Kenpo and the others followed closely. Not long after, Yiguchin saw a group of people surrounding an ancient tree. The ancient tree was incomparably huge, and its trunk was more than 100 feet wide, like a pillar supporting the sky. The crown of the tree was like a giant umbrella, supporting the sky of this underground space. On the branches of the tree crown, a dozen emerald green fruits could be vaguely seen. They were like green stars, emitting a hazy halo. It's the longevity ancient tree. Kenpo exclaimed. The longevity ancient tree was the same level as the enlightenment ancient tree. Unlike the enlightenment ancient tree, the longevity ancient tree's greatest value lay in its boundless life essence. If it wasn't destroyed, longevity ancient tree was ancient longevity, the longevity ancient tree ancient longevity ancient tree. It was said that as long as one did not completely lose their life, no matter how serious their injuries were, as long as they consumed a longevity fruit, they would be able to recover. And now, there were more than a dozen longevity ancient fruits on the branches of the longevity ancient tree. Not to mention the prodigies present, even the tribulation sages would be tempted. However, Yiguchin also noticed that the prodigies surrounding the longevity ancient tree didn't directly go forward to snatch the longevity ancient tree. There must be something wrong. Just as Yiguchin and the others were about to approach, a surprised shout came from afar. Master, we're here. It was Mu Xingzu and the others, followed by the Sacred Cliff College disciples. Yiguchin looked over. Sacred Cliff College's team had lost some people. However, the most important thing was that Ling Moyin, Ling Emoshu, Xuanlian, Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and the others were all there. Yiguchin heaved a sigh of relief. Why are you here as well? And why are you with my master? Mu Xingzhu's pretty eyes landed on Gong Luyue, and her face was filled with hostility. Suki Miyazaki was a little embarrassed. She couldn't bring herself to say that she met Yiguchin. Seeing the embarrassment on Suki Miyazaki's face, Mu Xingzhu couldn't help but look at her and Yiguchin suspiciously. Master, don't tell me. Mu Xingzhu said with jealousy. It's just a coincidence. Yiguchin waved his hand casually. After all, Mu Xingzhu and Suki Miyazaki didn't have any deep grudges. Therefore, other than bickering, they didn't have any conflicts. After everyone gathered, Yiguchin and the others also approached the longevity ancient tree. At that moment, Yiguchin realized why the prodigies around him didn't go to fight for the longevity fruit. The reason for that was because the entire longevity ancient tree was surrounded by a spirit formation. That spirit formation was so huge that it was blocking everyone outside. Under the longevity ancient tree, there were hundreds of strange ancient corpses sitting cross-legged. They looked like old monks meditating. It was a hair-raising sight. It's so strange. Yiguchin frowned. Yiguchin and the others' arrival naturally attracted a lot of attention. When these sky prides saw Yiguchen's face clearly, their faces were filled with extreme shock. Isn't that the natural saint, Dugu Wubai? Why is he still alive? Wasn't he surrounded by the beast tide? Yeah, and those Sacred Cliff College disciples. Why are they still alive? Many prodigies looked at Yiguchin and the others in disbelief. They felt as if they had seen a ghost. After all, they had seen with their own eyes that Yiguchen was framed by Chao Hu of the Molo dynasty and surrounded by the beast tide with the entire Sacred Cliff College team. Logically speaking, even a divine-dwelling prodigy wouldn't be able to survive such a beast tide. They couldn't understand how Yiguchen had managed to break out of the encirclement. "Why are you still alive?" An extremely sharp voice sounded from the crowd. It was filled with disbelief. Yiguchen's eyes instantly turned as cold as ice when he heard the voice. The person who had spoken was none other than the pink playboy. His demonic face was filled with shock and disbelief. He and Chao Hu had separated after breaking out of the beast tide, so he didn't know about Chao Hu's death. The pink playboy was extremely shocked when he saw Yiguchen and the others appear in front of him alive. "I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'll let you accompany Chao Hu now." Yiguchen smiled. However, that smile was extremely cold. Swoosh! Without any nonsense or hesitation, Yiguchen summoned the 9-dragon thunder prison and directly attacked. The pink playboy was already a dead man in his eyes. The pink playboy's eyes were filled with horror. He didn't expect Chao Hu to be killed by Yiguchen. He couldn't even deal with Yiguchen when they were in the ancient chaos wasteland. Not to mention that Yiguchen's strength had greatly increased. He could kill him effortlessly. TSK, looks like the pink playboy is going to die. Some of the surrounding prodigies were also watching the show. They were also surprised by Yiguchen's thunderous methods. There was no hesitation at all. "If you tricked me, I'll definitely kill you." This was one of Yiguchen's rules. There were also some prodigies from the Molo dynasty present, but they were also watching the show. Some of the prodigies from the other 3 dynasties still had some friendship. However, there was almost no friendship between the Molo dynasty's prodigies. They wouldn't help the pink playboy just because he was a prodigy from the same dynasty. Even Chao Hu was only willing to help the pink playboy because of the benefits. Just as Yiguchen's sword was about to pierce the pink playboy, the pink playboy shouted in panic, "Princess, save me!" There was a loud clang. A pitch-black sickle blocked Yiguchen's sword. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows and looked at the cold figure in front of the pink playboy. "You want to stop me?" Yiguchen's tone was cold. The person in front of the pink playboy was Princess Luo Ho, who ranked second on the blood ranking of the Molo dynasty. Princess Luo Ho wore half a mask, revealing her fiery red lips. She was extremely cold. Her skin was smooth and only a few pieces of armor covered her skin. She was so sexy that it made people's nostrils bleed. However, no one dared to look at Princess Luo Ho too much. Princess Luo Ho was too famous. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.